reports from Asheville, North Carolina.
Zoe Didion was at home last week when a mudslide began.
The mud was coming down so fast there were just houses skiing down the mountain.
In Swannanoa and many other places, search and rescue missions are ongoing as damage from Helene is still being revealed. Alan Dye says without water, power, and cell service, neighbors formed a word-of-mouth network to try to track down those who are missing.
I had neighbors down there doing swift boat rescues out of houses, mechanics and computer programmers going down there with canoes and ropes trying to get people out of homes.
Local officials say more than 200 people are still missing across Buncombe County. For NPR News, I'm Laura Hackett in Asheville, North Carolina.
Vice President Kamala Harris's office says she will go to North Carolina tomorrow to view storm recovery efforts. She'll get a briefing and then discuss the efforts the federal government is taking to support emergency responders in North Carolina and in other southeastern states. Former President Barack Obama is planning to campaign for Harris starting next week. NPR's Deepa Shivaram reports Obama is scheduled to appear at a Democratic rally for Harris in Pittsburgh.
Obama will kick off his campaign travels in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania, where Harris has been trying to drum up support from Democratic base voters and cut into Trump's margins in more conservative areas. After the stop in Pennsylvania, the Harris campaign says Obama will blitz other swing states in the final few weeks of the campaign. The former president will also help Democrats in down ballot races, signing on to fundraising emails and voicing ads for specific candidates. Obama and Harris's relationship goes back to his first race for president in 2007. Harris backed his primary campaign and knocked doors for him in Iowa while she was serving as district attorney of San Francisco. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
Union dock workers are going back to work today at ports along the east and Gulf coasts. The union says it has reached a tentative agreement on a 62% wage increase over the next 6 years, and it will temporarily extend its contract to continue bargaining on other issues. Stephen Bisaha with the Gulf States Newsroom has more.
The Dock Workers Union says it still has some negotiating to do with the alliance representing port operators and shipping companies. But the old contract's been extended to mid-January, giving the sides time to bargain. Earlier this week, the union said it wanted airtight language banning automation from ports to protect workers' jobs.
Stephen Bisaha reporting. On Wall Street, the Dow's up nearly 100 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Artists, residents, and stakeholders came together in Roxbury last night for the first Community Arts and Cultural Convening. The event, hosted by the Roxbury Cultural District, featured dancing and music and gave residents the opportunity to share feedback on the district's work. Interim President Callie says art is important for the local community and the economy.
It's in our DNA. It's our survival mechanism. It helps to sustain us. It's part of our well-being.
She says they hope to hold the celebration regularly. The Roxbury Cultural District was created 7 years ago to highlight arts and culture in that area, as one of 50 or so across the state. U.S. Representative Jim McGovern and other members of the Massachusetts congressional delegation have entered the fray when it comes to the price disparities of groceries at Stop and Shop locations statewide. Daily Hampshire Gazette reports the delegation sent a letter to the CEO of Stop and Shop's parent company, citing an investigation from 2023 that found a massive disparity in grocery items at a Jamaica Plain Stop and Shop compared to a location in Dedham. Also found were price disparities at Stop and Shop locations in Northampton and Holyoke, where prices fluctuated between the two stores. McGovern says the delegation wants Stop and Shop to disclose its pricing algorithm and list the factors that go into the pricing of its goods. Clouds mid-70s today, 67 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
Friday, I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Almost got the numbers wrong there.
No, we've only worked here 11 years. There's no reason to know what it is.
We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, Boston's own great indie singer-songwriter Will Dailey is going to have us all swooning here at the Boston Public Library, performing in about a half an hour. You don't want to miss that. And Mayor Michelle Wu will join us next Tuesday from 12 to 1 for another edition of Ask the Mayor. Our text question of the day involves President Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, dragging his feet on releasing his medical records. We want to know, should it be mandatory for would-be presidents to release their medical records? And does the fact that Trump isn't sharing his records make you think he might be hiding something? Text your thoughts at 877-301-8970. We'll read your text shortly before the 1 o'clock news. Hi, Jim.
Hey there. Can I just say one thing to you?
Certainly.
Man, dog, camera, elephant, woodblock, or whatever he recited.
Words.
Okay,
yeah.
whatever. We're starting the show celebrating the unsung heroes who show up every election cycle to do their part for the country, the dedicated everyday poll workers. A new piece in the Globe details how many of them, right here in Massachusetts, not some faraway place, face so much harassment after the 2020 election that they quit. In Nebraska, according to a piece on NPR this morning, counties that don't have enough people staffing the polls can draft residents to serve, literally, much like you would be drafted for jury duty. It's not a mystery why somebody wouldn't want to enlist on their own. The Globe tells the story of workers in Southbridge who got a seemingly harmless email from a cybersecurity group asking them to register their addresses and home phone and cell numbers, until it turned out that the effort was led by that creepy Mr. Pillow character, or whatever the hell it is, My Pillow, Mike Lindell, another election denier. Trump, a couple of days ago, writes on his Truth Social, when I win, those people that cheated, which is everybody who doesn't support him, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So this is not surprising. The number is 877-301-8970 to text or call. Are we doing enough to celebrate and protect the people who run our elections? You know who does it every time he's on our show? John King. John King never misses an opportunity to celebrate how wonderful these election workers are. Are you somebody who's worked the polls? How was your experience? And if you've never offered up time as a poll worker, would you consider volunteering? Or what do you make of this idea, like in Nebraska, of mandatory poll work service? Again, call or text 877-301-8970. You know where I left off this, by the way?
What'd you leave off?
Remember those 16 election secretaries or whatever, a couple of weeks ago, got some white powder in the mail, including Massachusetts at one Ashburton place. So it's everywhere.
Yeah, they're talking about all across the country, swatting these election workers, suspicious packages, all these phishing emails. What was the number? They said like 40% nationwide. 40% of clerks resigned between 2018 and 2022, and 38% of them talked about threats and harassment and all this kind of stuff. You think of the poll workers. I mean, we all know them. You go to a vote on election day,
you see them year after
and a lot
year,
of times they're very nice people. A lot of them retired people that say hello to you and tell you how to vote. They're just lovely people.
They don't tell you how to vote.
Yes.
The process,
they don't say Democrat or Republican, who you're voting for. They tell you how to do it if you're confused, and where to put the little pen and all that kind of stuff. That these people are getting threatened from coast to coast is kind of insane, isn't it? I mean, what's happened?
I'll tell you what happened. Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. The most powerful, we've played this a million times, and we're going to play it a million more. At the January 6th hearings, remember the testimony from Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Shay Moss, who were those legendary poll workers in Georgia, who were threatened. And by the way, the only good news out of this is Rudy Giuliani has a $148 million civil verdict against him for it.
And as you mentioned yesterday, his daughter said in a piece in Vanity Fair that Donald Trump had ruined her father's life.
Ruined her father's life, and she's supporting Kamala Harris. Here's a little bit of sound. You'll remember this. First from Shay Moss, and then her mother, Ruby Freeman.
I no longer give out my business card. I don't transfer calls. I don't want anyone knowing my name. I don't want to go anywhere with my mom because she might yell my name out over the grocery aisle or something. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all.
Do you know how it feels to have the president of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American. not to target one.
Those are extreme examples. And having said that, but the important part, what was in the Globe today is, and this white powder thing that I mentioned from a couple of weeks ago, it's happening here too. Maybe not as extremely as it is happening there, where people are being threatened. You're volunteering your time to do this thing. It's not the easiest work, by the way, because someone's name isn't found. They're aggravated because their name's not on the record. Not everybody is as nice to you as they should be, but they are sort of the bedrock of democracy. And then this complete loser, Mike Lindell, the pillow lunatic.
I'm very upset. I had some of those My Pillows. They were only $20.
You didn't tell me that. You ordered them?
Not afterwards. Before I knew.
Raise your right hand and say you didn't order them afterwards.
I did not do it afterwards.
Okay, fine. She raised her right hand.
They were $20. They're horrible. Get rid of them. They won't.
So did you return them?
I just threw them out.
No, you didn't.
I did.
You really did?
I had to do it, Jim. I had to throw it. I couldn't.
That's actually a beautiful thing.
Myself with Mike Lindell. I may have one left that I haven't thrown out.
Yeah, that's exactly. Okay, 877-301-8970. Have you ever been a poll worker? Talk about your experience. Have you ever thought about being one? Are you less likely to consider being one in light of what you hear about threats and all those kinds of things? By the way, I love the idea. If you're drafted to be on a jury and that's considered your civic duty, what's the difference with this? This is another civic duty that should be spread around. Let us all be drafted to serve as poll workers.
Just one thing I wanted to mention before we go to the calls and the texts. Ruby Freeman talked about, and I didn't know this, or maybe I'd forgotten it, but on January 6th when she was watching what was going on down at the Capitol, the FBI told her to get out of her house. So I
didn't remember this either.
Neither did I. She had to flee her own house because they were afraid of what could happen to her in her home. So she wasn't there for people to come in. She was afraid that she might get killed if she stayed in her house. And the Southbridge story that the Globe had talking about these poll workers, they interviewed this assistant clerk in Orange, only 7,500 people there. And the clerk told the Globe, every clerk I met told me how horrible 2020 was. And half of those clerks have now retired. So, I mean, right here, like Orange, Massachusetts, this is happening.
You know what they're doing tonight in Orange?
What are they doing?
They're all collectively burning their Mr. Pillows. They are not Mr. Pillow himself, but
now
the Mr. Pillow.
I might have 2 left.
This is really troubling. If you don't know Marjorie as well as I do. It was none,
Actually,
then it was 1,
I have 27.
then it was 2.
I have 27 Mr.
By
Pillows.
the way,
my whole house.
They're crap anyway, from what I understand.
Yeah, they're horrible.
So why'd you order so many? Because they were cheap.
I don't remember. I was at Best Buy before it went out of business, and they had these $20 pillows, and they seemed good, and I thought, what the hell, I'll try them, and they were horrible.
Can I tell you something? Jamie, who is the extraordinary lead producer of the show, has been tracking Marjorie on this, and it's just factual. It's not critical, so don't try to get him fired. Marjorie went from hearing of the pillows to buying them to throwing them out to having 1 left, to having 2 left. By the end of the show, she'll be a stockholder in My Pillow.
That's right. I'll be in the board of directors. But, a really good pillow is expensive. They're like $50, $60.
Okay, Marjorie.
So I figure, what the hell, right? And you get what you pay for in the pillow department.
Have you watched any shows on this guy? I mean, he is so certifiably insane.
What was the name of his book, From Crackhead to CEO?
No, he was. I mean, but that I admire, actually. He's willing to disclose that he had a drug problem.
But it's an odd name.
He's got another problem.
For your book,
yeah.
From Crackhead to CEO.
Well, calling yourself Mr. Pillow is pretty odd,
Mr.
too,
Pillow,
actually. An anonymous texter says, I wouldn't mind serving. Will there be free donuts? Maybe that's the attitude I'm looking for. Maybe do it like jury duty so I can get the time off from work.
Or you know what? Bring back the bake sales. We need more bake sales at these polling stations. John from Wakefield, what do you think?
Hello, John.
Hey, you guys. I usually call in to harass you about the Supreme Court, but I am literally driving back from a town office right now to volunteer for this election.
Are you really?
Good for you.
I just left. I have a friend who lives up in Draycott, and I'm going to do it up there with her. Because I read about all these accounts of how these people are threatened, and as much as I care about, Congress and the Supreme Court and these big institutions, like it's the little ordinary, unglamorous work of democracy that really, really matters. And I don't know if you guys read, but the New York Times had a feature a few months ago about a town clerk or an election clerk in, I think, Nevada, and this recall that she's facing, and how much she was a teacher, and the whole community knows her, and she's got a Trump flag outside her house, and yet because the county didn't go as much for Trump as Trump supporters thought it should, she's being hounded out of office. It's really harrowing, some of this stuff. And so I think everybody, I don't know that it should be compulsory, but we have to do this boring, unglamorous work and stand up to all these people who would intimidate, ordinary volunteers. So, yeah, I'm doing it. I can't wait. I hope there are donuts. I hope that guy's right.
Now, John from Wakefield, before you go, because we like you as a caller quite regularly, are you buying the notion that Marjorie has only 2 Mr. Pillows left in her house? Yes. Tell the truth.
Well, okay, I'll tell the truth, too. I appreciate it. I like you guys, too. If it were you, I'd be a little bit more skeptical. But Marjorie, I trust.
Thank you.
John,
Thank you, John.
You're like
Listen
millions
to this
of
texter.
people. Thank you.
She says, my husband, is it a Mr. Pillow or a My Pillow?
It's My Pillow,
My
but I
Pillow,
like calling
okay.
him Mr.
I like
Pillow.
it Mr. Pillow, too.
Okay.
My husband has a Mr. Pillow, and I call it the devil pillow. Thing always bunches up. What are you laughing at?
It's a great text.
The thing always
I love this.
bunches
The devil
up
pillow.
and slides over to my face at night and tries to suffocate me. So that's what happens if you get a Mr. Pillow or My Pillow. Listen to Woody, the UPS driver. He's one of our frequent texters.
Yeah,
he
he
says,
is.
I used to be a poll worker in Watertown, Mass. until 2016. That's when people started questioning me about my job. Was I checking all the IDs? Who was I to be there? Et cetera, et cetera. It was very uncomfortable.
877-301-8970. John said it perfectly. By the way, great to start the day with somebody who's actually
I know.
gone
It's
out
very
there.
impressive.
Have you ever done it?
No. Have you?
Why have we not done it?
I
No, I'm
know.
serious about this.
I guess we should be more civically involved, Jim.
Pamela in Hyde Park, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling. Hi.
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 When I retired, the first thing I did was sign up to work at the poll.
Good for you.
And it was such a great learning experience, just to see all the safety measures that are put in place to make sure that nobody is messing with that election at that particular site. And it was amazing.
And why'd you decide that was something you were going to do upon retirement?
Because I was unemployed. I just thought it's something everybody should do.
Good for you.
It's an important right, an important thing to do, and you're working with wonderful people from all walks of life.
Pamela, that's great. That's really, that's great. Thank you so much for the call. We appreciate it.
Joe from Somerset. I started working in the polls 3 years ago, wanted to see how the ballots were counted. In Massachusetts, there is no way fake ballots can be entered or that someone who isn't registered could vote. I would encourage anyone who has a question about the accuracy of the votes to volunteer. And by the way, you get paid for it. And listen to this. This is somebody from North Carolina, which is a swing state. I've worked for years at the polls in Rhode Island and now in North Carolina for the past 4 years. It's a bit crazy politically around here because of the swing state status, but I feel 100% confident that the elections in North Carolina are safe and fair, and so far I feel safe working in the polls, and I listen to GBH from North Carolina every day to keep me sane. Thank you very much.
Nancy in Winthrop texts, on The View, Joy Behar once said, like sleeping on a My Pillow was like sleeping on a manhole cover. Kathy in Salem, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling, Kathy. Hi.
Hi, how you doing? I listen almost every day.
Thank you.
I've only called in once a long time ago, but yeah, I started out with the 2020 election, which was just something I promised myself that I would do.
Good.
And I was, one of the regular poll workers, and then I've since been like promoted or whatever to warden of the precinct that I do.
Great.
But my stomach is in knots every time there's an election, primary or whatever, it doesn't matter, because it's a lot of responsibility, but it's so worthwhile. I would advise anybody who's interested at all to try it out, because it's very rewarding as far as knowing that you're doing something, for the democracy.
Can I tell you, I love that call, Kathy. That was perfect. Thank you, and thanks for what you're doing. I love that. Thank you. And talk about, she said her stomach's in knots. I thought she was going to say about threats. She said because the responsibility is so significant to make sure you get it right, that everybody's vote gets counted. It's a beautiful thing. Now, there's an anonymous texter, Marjorie, who I think is sort of fighting for you. Do you want to read that text? Top one.
When will Jim get rid of his Tesla la la, or like Marjorie, will he be buying 2 more?
It's a variation on a theme. I would agree.
Okay.
877-301-8970 is the number.
You know, someone who says that they work in a very Republican town loves being a poll worker, even though this person is a staunch Democrat, because the experience has been very positive. So there's a lot of very patriotic poll workers here texting in that say it's really worth the experience.
Well, by the way, did anybody think there were anything but patriotic poll workers until Trump and Giuliani in 2020?
But think about how scary when he says people are going to be prosecuted like we've never seen it before. Like we've never seen it before. That's one of his big expressions. Everything's going to happen like we've never seen it before.
Everything's the biggest, the best, and the greatest.
Yeah, it's scary to think that if there's one of these swing states where the election is close, and these people, these Trump people, come down and start going after you, it's frightening.
So Bill and Beverly asked an interesting question. Could Marjorie be angling to become Mrs. Pillow? I'll leave that there.
Bill, you caught me. I got to say, one look at Michael Lindell and I said, oh my God, there he is.
From crackhead to Mr. Marjorie Egan. It's the name of his new book. By the way, before we take a break, a little bit more with Shay Moss. This is Adam Schiff, who obviously is a member of the House of Representatives, and he was on the January 6th committee. He's also the Democratic nominee for United States Senate in California, replacing Dianne Feinstein. Here he is asking Shay Moss, that's the daughter in the Shay Moss-Ruby Freeman connection, about the impact of targeted attacks on election workers where she worked in Georgia.
Tell us, if you would, of the other election workers shown in that State Farm Arena video and their supervisors. How many are still election workers in Fulton County?
There is no permanent election worker or supervisor in that video that's still there.
And did you end up leaving your position as well?
Yes, I left.
Yeah, how sad that is, by the way. I hope that because we've heard them both so many times, we don't become hardened to it. That is one of the most frightening, saddest stories we heard about January 6th. These two average people who cared about their community, wanted to serve in Fulton County, which is Atlanta, and look what happened to these people, targeted by the former mayor of New York City and the president of the United States.
And you know, they're probably never going to see a dime of the money they got from Giuliani.
Well, he's been forced to sell. Hopefully they'll see, he was forced to sell that condo of his in New York City for $6 million or something. Let's take a break, Marjorie.
Okay, we're taking a break. We're talking about poll workers. The agita a lot of poll workers are feeling leading up to this election, the fact that so many of them have quit. Are we doing enough to protect them from harassment? And what would it take to make you a poll worker along the lines of what's been implemented in Nebraska, where they have an actual poll worker draft? The conversation continues. Listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Japanese officials are bringing back nuclear power, but in the wake of the 2011 Fukushima disaster, many citizens are pushing back.
Does that seawall being there make you feel any safer?
No, I don't think so. It's not safe at all.
That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, ranked the #1 public university in New England by U.S. News and World Report. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu. And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering private cooking events for your next team-building activity, family reunion, birthday party, or night out. You can learn more at cambridgeculinary.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. Thank you all. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In about 10 minutes or so, the immensely talented Will Dailey is going to sing and talk to us a bit. And on Tuesday from noon to 1, Jamie? Noon to 1, Mayor Wu is going to be here for Ask the Mayor. And as I think you know, if you come down to the library, you could possibly ask her a question face to face. Reminder, text prompt of the day. Donald Trump still hasn't released his medical records, even as he's he's pushing 80, spent much of his campaign lambasting Biden for his advanced age. Should every presidential candidate be required to release detailed medical records? And what's Trump afraid of us seeing in those records? The number is 877-301-8970, and we read some of them before the 1 o'clock news. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the continued threats poll workers face, not just around the country, but here as well, as the election gets into full swing, 31 or 2 or 3 days. What's the solution? Is it something like the law in a couple of counties in Nebraska where they draft residents to work polls on Election Day? We've got a lot of great stories from people who've actually worked the polls. We started with a guy who's volunteering just today to do it. Give us a buzz, 877-301-8970, or the lines are full. Text us if you are in the mood.
Now, apparently Paul from Worcester has done some investigative work regarding Mr. Pillows.
Sure.
And he says they're filled with 100% shredded polyurethane with a cotton cover. He's concerned about polyurethane being flammable and that it's like the things that are made with that microfiber. So he says Mr. Pillows are giving you microdust to breathe, and if you get too frisky between the sheets, they could burst into flames.
That's really, is that good news or bad news?
I don't know. We've never heard that. That's what Paul from Worcester says.
Yeah,
we don't know that.
We're not either certifying
We're not saying
or
anything
whatever.
about flammability,
We're
but
not?
it's another concern
I think
about
you just did.
Mr. Pillows. Celeste from Hyde Park. What do you think,
Hello,
Celeste?
Hi, I love the show. Number
Thanks.
one,
Thank you.
I've been
Thanks.
a poll worker for 15 years.
Wow.
Number two, it's your civic duty to do something like that.
Great.
Number three, it's an honor, and let me share something with
What?
the American people. Get out there and be a poll worker, and you'll learn a whole lot about your country and your citizens.
Celeste, you're fabulous. That was great. I love those kind of calls. Celeste, thank you.
You know, Celeste, you'd be happy to know there are a lot of people that are really very serious about this, and they all talk about how safe the elections are and how checks and things are double checked and triple checked and all that. Here's one that says, I'm 55 years old. I take vacation time from my real job to do early voting on Election Day. I agree with the people who say there's no way we can rig an election. This person is from Oxford, Massachusetts, and it can be a long day. It can be a very long day. He says it's an 18-hour day up there in Oxford, Massachusetts on Election Day.
Well, I assume it is, right? The polls are open, 12 hours or 13 hours or something like that? And obviously you have to prep, you have
Jim,
to clean up
a lot
and
of people
whatever.
are getting scones for breakfast and really fancy lunches. They bring them dinner, too, in Westboro.
I know,
Be
Marguerite, when we're
opportunity for
trying
you.
to sell something as a patriotic duty, having a hot bar is part of the enticement.
Yeah.
I'm not sure is exactly what we're trying to sell. But I have to say, I'm a little embarrassed by this. I asked you and I asked why haven't we done it? Why haven't we taken a day off? If we're so,
it's never occurred
if
to
we
me.
celebrate people who do this kind of thing, why don't we take a vacation? Well, of course, I guess we talk about the elections on vacation. But I mean, we should put our whatevers where our whatevers
Our excuse
are.
is, Jim, it would be bad if we took the day off on Election Day.
No, that's a good point.
That's a good excuse.
Thank you.
Mary from Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hello, Mary.
Hi, first time caller, long time listener. I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited.
We appreciate it.
I just wanted to call in. I had coffee with a friend who told me that she's flying down to Georgia and she has volunteered to be a poll watcher.
Wow.
And her job really is to look and see what is going on and look for intimidation. And she documents it and calls it in to a team of lawyers who then takes action.
So she's not. She's a little different. I was going to say she's not a Georgia resident. She's not a poll worker in the traditional sense. She's each campaign in any campaign is entitled to have a poll watcher representing their side to watch the balloting. So I assume she's representing Harris or Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that she is.
Yeah.
So she felt that she wasn't going to be able to do any significant impact here in Rhode Island, and decided that it was important to make sure we had fair elections, and as traveling down to Georgia to do this for about 4 days.
By the way, that is a friend of mine just flew to Wisconsin to do door-to-door knocking for Kamala Harris. Your friend is flying to Georgia.
Yeah, good for her.
To do 4 days of poll. That is great, Mary. Congratulate her for us and thank her for us. That's great. Thank you for your first call, and we hope you make another one soon. How about that, by the way? You
To
get
fly
on a
to
plane,
Georgia? That's
you
pretty
spend the money to
impressive.
do there. I assume you stay at a friend's or a hotel, and that's really quite a level of wonderful commitment. You
Okay,
know?
back to Mr. Pillow here for a second.
Okay.
Okay. They just erased it from the. I have to find it now. Here it is. I have a My Pillow that I inherited from an ex. Had it since long before it was common knowledge that Mr. Pillow is evil.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to switch pillows, but it's the only pillow that doesn't result in a messed up neck. However, I keep it in a second zipped pillowcase to hide
My shame.
my shame.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. 877-301-8097. You know, everybody, I just want to be clear here. Everybody has described wonderful experiences, which is actually quite terrific. But read the Globe story about threats that people have gotten right here in Massachusetts. On all horrible things in this country, we tend to think it's somewhere else. And it's not somewhere else. As I said, the white powder was delivered, turned out not to have been something horrible, was delivered in an envelope to 1 Ashburton Place, where the Secretary of State's office is. So a lot of stuff happens here.
And imagine the people that fell for this email that allegedly was from Mr. Pillow there.
And gave them their cell number and everything?
Gave them their cell phone and their home address. Yeah, imagine how nervous they might be at this particular juncture.
By the way, here's a question for you. I don't know the answer to this. This is another anonymous texter. I was a pole dancer for a couple of weeks. Does that count? I think it does. Actually, does it count? I think it does.
I think we'll give you extra credit for that.
I think it does.
You can segue from one poll to another poll. Do it that way. Anne from Marblehead, thank you for calling.
Hello, Anne.
Hi.
Hi.
On this gorgeous day, I'm calling from Marblehead, but I live on the Cape, and I plan on signing up to volunteer on Election Day.
Great.
I am not afraid. I'm 84 years old.
Whoa.
I'm not afraid. But what frightens me more is putting a sign on my lawn that will say Harris Walls, because with so many unstable people in this world, that frightens me more, that someone's not going to throw a Molotov cocktail at my house or other destructive stuff. That frightens me more.
It's horrible.
You know, Anne, it amazes me, too. There's a lot of Trump signs on the Cape. Especially
I told you, I was driving back from Wellfleet on Saturday, and every bridge had people standing with "Let's Go Brandon," which is a disparaging way to reference Joe Biden, and "Go Trump" and all that sort of stuff. And that's horrible, but it's great you're doing the volunteering, and it's horrible that you have fear, which I totally understand, to put a lawn sign up. It really is. It's horrible. Anne, thanks for the call.
Jill says that we can volunteer to be poll people during the early voting period.
That's a very good point.
So 10/19 to 11/2.
Right, it starts October 19th.
Okay, Jim.
How about it?
Right after you.
No, it's... okay. Of course, Marjorie, as we know, is some days going to the wrong polling place, attempted to vote on the wrong day. One more call before we have some music, Marjorie.
Okay, Phil in Beverly, thank you for calling.
Hello, Phil.
Hey, the question is, what is Merrick Garland doing about trying to do something with the DOJ to protect the poll workers? I've never seen him or any evidence of any convictions or any evidence of tracking down those people that are doing that action, which is probably political action groups that are behind it.
Well,
and,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
If it's by mail, sometimes the permit number on the envelope, somebody has to pay for that permit number, and there should be some way to track down the entity that's doing all this. So,
well, Phil, we have pretty regularly, including yesterday, criticized Merrick Garland's actions as Attorney General. The only reason I can't join you here is I don't know if you're right or not. I don't know if he has acted against any of this kind of harassment. I don't know what the answer to that question is. We'll try to check it out and let you know. Phil, thank you much for your call.
Okay, thank you
very much.
much.
It just occurred to me that I'm embarrassed that I don't know. Could one of you guys check, and we'll tell people in the next segment, was Giuliani ever criminally charged for what he did? We know there's a $148 million civil verdict on behalf of the mother and daughter who did such wonderful work there. But was he ever criminally charged? I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
Remember you talking about they were passing drugs between each other and all this crazy stuff and had all these videos.
What was it, a mint it turned out to be or something?
Yeah, it was a mint.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for the calls and texts, Jim
And
just
thanks
said.
for doing poll watching, all of you. A lot of you
Yep.
did it. It's great.
And thanks for all the info about Mr. Pillow or My Pillow or whatever
Whoever
it
he
is.
is, yeah.
Don't buy one is the bottom line, I would say. After a quick break, it is time for Live Music Friday, courtesy this week of Boston's own great indie singer-songwriter, the amazing Will Dailey. He is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH.
Now playing on the GBH News YouTube channel.
This morning they were waiting for the blacks who arrived at South Boston High.
Never cried. Boston's busing legacy.
You don't think about tomorrow, you just think about today when you get in there, get on that bus, get off that bus, get in that scoop. Then I'm going through today. Thank God I got out. I'm going home. And then the next day.
Watch on youtube.com/GBH News.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Tools of the Mind, offering a bite of tools, professional development workshops empowering pre-K and kindergarten teachers with actionable strategies to propel children's self-regulation development. More at toolsofthemind.org. And Samet's Blackstone Associates, providing brand-focused strategy, content, cross-media design, and fundraising support to help mission-driven organizations build and deepen relationships. More at sametz.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library. Thank you for the applause, Marjorie. I appreciate it. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The mayor will join us right here on Tuesday from 12 to 1. And by the way, the answer to the question about Giuliani or the RICO charges pending against him. This next guy we've known for a pretty long time. Last time he was with us on the stage, singer-songwriter Will Dailey was debuting a project that would forever change his approach to music. He called it the $10 song, piece of music inspired by a painting from the great Joni Mitchell. He'll explain that all to you in a couple of minutes. Now that he's back with a whole album of songs being released in a similar fan-forward fashion, it's called Boys Talking. It'll be available to buy at shows starting October 8th, including a local one on the 10th at the Sinclair in Cambridge. For more information, go to willdailey.com. That's the A-I-L-E-Y. We'll talk to Will in a minute, but first, here is Will singing My Old Ride, Will.
You could do 75, tires gone bald and your paint peeling off and both of your tail lights out. I gripped the wheel and on came horizons, passing cars in the opposite lane while the radio is cutting out. Old ride, I can still hear your engine moan, saying I'm just here to get you where you need to go. My old ride, let's top off the tank and gun it out west. We can try our best to make the sunset last. We can try to make the sunset last. Hit 16, he tossed me the keys, said if you get it running, it is yours to keep. Busted down as the man who gave it. I put more in than it was worth. Down fast and I scorched that earth. I jerked the wheel and I never bothered waving. My old ride, I can still hear your engine moan, saying I'm just here to get you where you need to go. My old ride, let's talk tank and gun it out west. We can try our best to make the sunset last. got a Polaroid of a burning kid, carousel in a blur behind him, leaning on a shiny new hood. I fear now I recognize those eyes in the rearview across a great divide as I race back home in time to say goodbye. Try our best to make the sunset last. We can try our best to make the sunset last. Oh, just a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. Oh, now just a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer.
My Old Ride. It's fabulous. Will's going to join us. Again, check him out, Will Dailey, DAILEY.com. He's going to be at the Sinclair in Cambridge on the 10th of this month. Hello there, Will Dailey. How are you?
Hey,
I'm good.
Will.
How are you?
Great to see you.
Great,
Great to see you.
Great to
Thanks
see
for
you.
having me back.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you back. So tell us about the new album. That song was from the new album, right?
That's from the new album, Boys Talking. You know, it's really hard to watch the first half of the show. Your blood starts to boil. You're getting angry about what's happening in the world. I'm like, I gotta go sing a song right now.
Well, that's why you're here, my friend. There's a point to
Yeah,
that.
that's right. That's right. Are you into My Pillows or Mr. Pillows, or are you not?
No,
Mr.
no, I
Okay,
sleep without a pillow now after all that.
You have to do it. Just get rid of them all
Yeah,
together.
just get rid of them all.
But tell us about the Boys Talking, the
Yeah.
theme.
Well, I did the $10 song project last year, which was just a song that you can only hear at my merch table. People pay $10 to listen to a song that is never coming out anywhere online, not on an album. You have to be present. You put on headphones. The first person to ever do it, you weren't here, Jim, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was Marjorie.
That's right. Because I was telling him about this morning. He said, I don't remember this. And then he must have said I wasn't here. And it was. I was here with somebody else. Of course, I don't remember who it was. But we listened to it over there on the side of the room.
Can you do me a favor? I know you're going to talk about the album, Marjorie asked you, but since you wrote this up, what is the thinking behind? Aren't you screwing yourself by doing this?
Well, we are all getting screwed, though. We're all getting screwed.
That's right.
We are in the tyranny of content. 100,000 songs come out a day. And instead of saying, hey, go click on this and get my numbers up. Oh, I got 1 million spins. I got 10 million spins. Are we really connecting with each other? You know, and we had fast food, and I think we have fast art culture right now. And it's about numbers. And I think we need to focus on artists that make that corner restaurant and invite you down. There's only 10 tables, but you matter for being there, and they're glad you're there. And that's not happening in music. And artists are the canary in the coal mine. And we're all somehow on this hamster wheel of the digital abyss. And I just refuse to be there and be judged by it. It's unhealthy for all of us. It's not a middle finger to that world. I've just put out a song on it. But the $10 song project, I had people 2 hours north of Detroit who never heard me before weeping at the table. And I was like, is it that bad? But I mean,
No, weeping. That was not why
but
they were weeping.
But they were. Then you have a discussion. Is it the song, or is it this moment that you know you're the only person listening to this song and you can't recreate it, and you just got something special? And I think that's something we all deserve, to feel more connected, so that we can also be a force against so much of the toxicity that we're dealing
So what do
with.
we have to go to your bathroom to hear your new album? Where are we going to hear the new album?
Okay, so that informed Boys Talking. So we went in Q Division in Somerville. Another thing, you know, so much of music is being made by artists sharing files across continents, across countries. So I made sure that we had 10 of the best people. I try to be the least talented person in the room, in there for 10 days, 12 hours a day, feed them, treat them well, and we cut these songs live. And I was like, what can I do for this album that feels fulfilling? My job is not music. I'd be doing music no matter what I was doing for life. I can't help that. If I could stop writing songs, I would. It's a nightmare. But my job is connection and asking people for their time with music, which is one of our most ancient human practices, along with hunting, I think sex, and some other things. It's one of our most ancient practices, and it can alleviate and connect us in a way that makes us formidable for any challenge.
So explain this to people, how this works when you are there with your song.
I'm getting off topic. Sorry.
No, but so people understand the $10 deal. Was it?
Well, explain the $10 deal. How about the album? I want to know about the album.
So $10 song is still on my merch table every night. People come up, they scan Venmo or pay $10.
So it'll be there at the Sinclair.
It's there at the Sinclair. It's always with me. The book is full. Joni Mitchell found out about the project.
And Graham Nash and all
Graham
these
Nash
famous
found out.
Who was with us last week.
Yes.
Were you here for that?
I was.
Okay, good.
And they're, Graham Nash's manager was like, send us the song. I'm like, I'm not emailing the song. I can send a CD player with headphones and the book, and she can do it like everybody else. And I knew an email will get lost in the Joni Mitchell email, requests. But Boys Talking is going to be the album I'm not releasing. So the first single is out now.
You're not?
I'm not. I got little quotes up. I'm not releasing. The first single, Make Another Me, with Juliana Hatfield, the great Juliana Hatfield.
Yes, she is great.
Is out now. It came out last Friday. It's been out for a week. It's on all the platforms. You can find it anywhere.
Okay.
Starting with my tour next week in the Sinclair here in town, the vinyl, the tape cassette, the CD will be available on my merch table. You can go to my website right now for the first time today and buy it.
Tell us who Boys Talking was inspired by. What boys were talking that inspired the title?
Well, the album started with two friends that I'd lost over the time period of the pandemic, one to suicide and one to cancer. And they were the two friends that, on the morning of a release, I would wake up to a text, breaking it down. And I thought, wow, how lucky am I to have them for friends? And then it's kind of stopped me from going forward. Like thinking of people that you're going to lose and that you depend on in the mechanics of your life. And so Dave Brophy, a longtime drummer and production partner and best friend, we went into the studio and we didn't have a title. And all these songs were kind of exploring some of these topics. And one day I'm just like, I don't know, man. It's like every one of these songs is just like how boys trying to talk. And it was just one of those gentlemen, dude, that's the album title, Boys Talking. And it's really perfect for how the vision for the record started.
Isn't there a Springsteen connection, though, to a talking thing?
Yeah, I was in Asbury Park with my friend Danny Clinch, who's Springsteen's longtime photographer, and he showed me this picture of Springsteen and his dad and started talking about the day they had driving around town, reminiscing about being kids in Asbury Park. And then we spent the rest of the night kind of drinking out on the shore and just telling stories about dads and fatherhood. And I went home and I was like, am I writing a song right now about Bruce Springsteen and my friend's dad? And
yeah, but
and
that's a rich topic, fathers and sons and all those blockages and all those resentments and all those. I mean, I think that's a great.
Yeah.
Can I get back? I don't want to belabor this, but I will. I totally understand. I've known you for a long time. You're a very principled, decent soul, in addition to being wildly
Did you hear what
talented.
John from Westford said?
What did he say?
He sounds like the child of James Taylor and Bob Dylan.
Are you the child of either of those people?
Yeah, they don't want that out there because it was just one night, and people think it's not possible.
Together,
but it is,
too,
yeah.
It's incredible that they produced
I was
this.
carried by James, but yeah, it was.
But, forget you and you're not wanting to play into whatever you described a minute ago. Aren't you denying access to your music to people who might love it but want? I'm not coming to a Will Dailey concert to hear this if I don't know Will Dailey's music. One of the ways I find Will Dailey's music is I find it to be available in places that you don't want it to be.
In the abyss of all our content. I got
you. In the abyss of all, exactly.
So let's workshop this. I have 7 albums out online that you can go get right now. The Make Another Me, the first single from Boys Talking, is out everywhere. Everyone who's buying the album is going to get a message or a social media message from me sometime around December. Hey, whoever's bought Boys Talking and has spent time with it, what song do you think we should release in January? So the people who have it have some agency and feel like by participating in art, they then can have a voice in how art is shared and have a little bit more connectivity to all our so-called interconnectivity. And at the end of the day, I probably will only release about 7 songs from Boys Talking that the group of people who bought it and respond to those questions release. If you still own it at the end of the day on vinyl, tape, CD, or download, there's 3 songs that you kind of feel like I have. And I feel like we deserve that a little bit more instead of everything that people make is out there for everyone. It's kind of robs us a little bit of an exchange that we have because art and music started around a fire with an exchange that you had to be there for and you felt. And recorded music is just 100 years old. It's not as old as music. And I want to bring it into that realm of being present.
You know, before you sing in a couple of minutes again, for those who don't know Will or his music, you've won like Best Boston Musician, Best Boston Album, year after year after year after year. What's the venue situation for non-superstars in Boston these days?
The venue situation is always in flux, post-pandemic, it's super in flux.
During the pandemic, by the way, Will's on my television show.
That was great.
Where were you singing from, Will?
My shower.
Your shower, exactly.
That was great.
Go
That
ahead,
was
I'm
a
sorry.
riot.
Go ahead, continue.
We had 2 beautiful clubs open up in town, High Capacity, the MGM, and the Roadrunner. They're great clubs. But what happens is, in a city like Boston, those tickets, those high-end tickets, buy up a lot of the music lovers and the concert goers. So then, starting under 1,000, those are last-minute decisions in those rooms. Instead of having maybe, I'm going to go to the House of Blues, or I'm going to go to Sinclair, or I'm going to go to Paradise, and even the more smaller, very important ones, the actual soil of the city, Toad, Lizard Lounge, the Burren, they struggle a little bit more because how many concerts can you go to a year?
That's right.
Well, you're looking at the Roadrunner or the MGM's schedule or any other of the great venues, and you're buying that 4 months out. And we announce 3 months out. You've already spent your money.
Yeah.
So the only way to fix that is just to get more concert lovers in town. I don't think we need to get rid of venues or call anything out. It's actually, we need to make sure Boston realizes what a powerful live music city it can be and what that does for a community when that is one of the patches on your
and
uniform.
the Sinclair is an unbelievably great place to see live music.
I just saw
so
Jack
close.
White there 2 weeks ago. It was unbelievable.
And then they have that rim that goes around the top
Yeah.
with the tables and stuff like that. It's great.
One last thing we mention every time live music is mentioned by a guest, our late, great colleague, Brian O'Donovan, who did as much for live music as where it's at. And for those of you who have not gone to live music shows, even if you love performers and love their art, until you've seen them do it in the flesh, whether it's the BSO or Will Dailey, wherever the hell it is, it changes, in my opinion, absolutely everything. So check them out. We'll tell people again where you're going to be. What are you singing for us now there, Will Dailey?
Well, I'm singing a song called Hell of a Drug from Boys Talking. By the way, I need a direct line to call in when I'm driving around.
Oh, we'll get you one.
I need
we'll
a bat,
discuss
like a bat
whether
phone.
we'll give it
I
to
need
him.
like a bat phone because I'm just incensed all the time. Like I want to call in about guns and Trump and all this stuff.
I know. It's
You could actually co-host the show. I just realized
That's
one
right.
of us is off. That's a
All right,
topic for another day. Go
I'm
ahead.
ready. I'm ready,
Go ahead.
Will.
Okay.
What are you
Next
playing?
time Jim's off.
What are you
I'm
playing?
playing Hell of a Drug. It's about what we're dealing with each other and I would say Trump. And I said to a friend the other day that, don't forget the gift of Donald Trump, because in one man, he represents every negative quality of the American psyche. The militarized racism, sexism, the grift, the thievery, and the gaslighting. And just getting him out of our lives is not enough. He's like an inoculation shot into our national immune system and gives us a great chance to move forward because these things have always been pervasive. And he put it in one gross package. And so this is called Hell of a Drug. That's what I'll play.
Gently put your headphones down. Do you want to tell Marjorie what the deal is?
Okay. There's going to be a show the 10th of October at the Sinclair in Cambridge.
Which is a great venue.
It was a great venue. For more information, you go to willdailey.com. That's Dailey, D-A-I-L-E-Y. And Boys Talking is going to be available at shows starting October 8th.
Here he is, Will Dailey, singing Hell of a Drug.
Dumb luck scores a ticket going anyway. It still takes a long way around. Taking on cuts, 1,000 by paper, mines you put in the ground. Main line and enemies. You never know, never seen. Then you nod out, grin on your mug. Home must be a hell of a drug. Born in the right time, complexion and country. Still, all that's not enough. Write blank checks to that boy, picking your pockets. Say you trust him, cause all that money he got. Look, my man, he cares for me. My country, job, and family. While you your own dreams, dig your own drain. Home must be a hell of a drug. I can't quit anytime I want. I can't quit anytime, yeah, 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 yeah. While you dig your own hole, lock your own cage. Home must be a hell.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Rockland Trust Bank, helping foster healthy relationships with money by providing education and resources to the community, one neighborhood at a time. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. From empires to lesser-known stories, actor John Leguizamo highlights Latino and Latina heroes and their contributions throughout history. Catch Voces, American Historia, the untold history of Latinos, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Time Out, it's a travel magazine, has just listed Union Square in Somerville as one of the best neighborhoods in the world. Really? We'll talk with GBH's Callie Crossley about this and our nation's most fervent feminist, pro-choice advocate, Melania Trump.
I'm Marjorie Egan. New England EPA Administrator David Cash talks about the impacts of the Inflation Reduction Act and what's next for climate in 2024, from offshore wind to our threatened coastline. Then our text prompt of the day. Donald Trump hasn't released his medical records even as he's pushing 80, and he spent much of the campaign lambasting Joe Biden for his advanced age. should every presidential candidate be required to release detailed medical records? Text us at 877-301-8970. That's next on hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Employers in the U.S. picked up their pace of hiring in September. NPR's Scott Horsley says the economy added more than 250,000 jobs during the month as the nation's jobless rate dipped slightly to 4.1%.
The monthly jobs report from the Labor Department was significantly stronger than forecasters had expected. In addition to the solid pace of hiring in September, job gains for July and August were also revised up by a total of 72,000 jobs. Restaurants, retailers, and construction companies all added jobs last month, while factories saw a modest dip in employment. Average wages in September were up 4% from a year ago, which is likely more than enough to outpace inflation. Today's jobs report likely means the Federal Reserve will take its time in lowering interest rates, although we will get one more monthly reading on the job market before the next Fed meeting. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Political observers are watching for an October surprise. The idea that something could influence the outcome of the presidential election could be news events. This week, Vice President Harris is dealing with two. NPR's Frank Ordonez is traveling this week with Harris, who campaigns today in Detroit and Flint, Michigan. This while the White House confronts the escalating conflict between its ally Israel and Iran.
After Iran sent missiles into Israel this week, Harris got out there. She expressed support for Israel and concern about the escalation. And then I traveled with her on Wednesday to Georgia. She surveyed the damage and talked to families who lost homes and lost loved ones. I mean, her campaign says that she's demonstrating, quote, serious leadership, and that it's a clear contrast with former President Donald Trump, who they say is just fanning the flames of division.
NPR's Franco Ordonez. Trump, meanwhile, is visiting Georgia today. He and Governor Brian Kemp are touring storm damage together in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. It has been a week since heavy rainfall from the hurricane devastated a wide swath of the southeastern U.S. One of the hardest hit areas was the mountains of western North Carolina, where even a week later, the full extent of the damage is still unknown. NPR's Liz Baker has more.
Cale Ogle grew up in Swannanoa, but the effects of the storm made it difficult for him to return home to check on family. Roads were blocked by downed trees, utility poles, mudslides, even whole houses swept off their foundations. The river is back in its usual banks now, but Ogle says it's still a lot to take in.
Everything on the river's just gone, and actually seeing it like, the school we went to and grew up in, the neighborhood you grew up in, like even just the skyline is different from all the trees and all the structures that just aren't there, and it was surreal.
Search, rescue, and recovery operations are still going on here, and authorities and volunteers hope to reach those still missing and to get supplies to the others who remain stranded. It'll be a long time before this area, and so many others like it, recover.
That's Liz Baker reporting. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Today is the day that Jeffrey Noble officially becomes the new colonel and superintendent of the Massachusetts State Police. Governor Maura Healey swore Noble in the State House earlier today. He says he's ready to get to work. Noble spent 30 years in law enforcement, most of them with the New Jersey State Police. Attorneys for Karen Reed have asked to delay proceedings in a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, who she's accused of killing. The lawyers requested the civil trial, which has not yet been scheduled, be held after Reed's second criminal trial, which is set to begin in January. The family of O'Keefe is suing Reed, claiming she caused his death by hitting him with her SUV and then leaving him to die in a blizzard. Reed and her attorneys in the criminal case have said that she was framed and that O'Keefe was beaten to death inside of a home in Canton. The number of Massachusetts towns that U.S. Census Bureau data shows have an average annual household income of $200,000 or more continues to grow. Boston Business Journal reports that this year there are 18 communities where the average household income surpasses the $200,000 mark. Last year there were 11. 5 years ago there were only 2. For those keeping score, the highest 5 zip codes for household income in Massachusetts are in Dover, Newton, Wellesley, Weston, and Carlisle. In sports preseason basketball, Celtics play Denver and Abu Dhabi today. That game is about ready to start. It's a noontime start because of the time difference. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations.
Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Jim Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to point out a couple of things. Mayor Wu's going to be here on Tuesday for another edition of Ask the Mayor, taking our questions and yours. Astronaut Sunita Williams is going to zoom in. She's the one that's up in space, supposed to be back in 2 weeks, and now she's going to be back in like 8 months or something. But she's got a local connection. She's going to be zooming in from outer space to the Boston Public Library from the International Space Station. That's October 16th. And I want to mention...
we should say with that, it's going to be 11:40. People should be here for this.
Yeah, it'd be pretty
to
cool.
honor her, and also it's going to be great. But go ahead.
And I want to mention, our timing was off last segment. I want to just tell people, Will Dailey, the great indie singer-songwriter, just performed for us. His new album, Boys Talking, comes out Tuesday, October 8th, and he's going to be at the Sinclair in Cambridge, October 10th. For information on all things, Will, go to willdailey.com. That's Dailey. And one more thing, our text prompt today. Donald Trump hasn't released his medical records even as he's pushing 80 and spent much of his campaign lambasting Biden for being too old. Should every candidate be required to release their medical records? What's Trump afraid of us seeing in those records? You can text us at 877-301-8970, and we'll read them right before the 1 o'clock news. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. We're joined now at the desk by Callie Crossley. Hello to her, too. She's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. You can catch that Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6 p.m. You can also hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. And she is also the co-host for GBH's Culture Show, which airs daily at 3 right here on 89.7. And as I hope you know, on Fridays, like today, their Weekend Review is live from the Boston Public Library, so either please stick around, or if you're not here now, join us for that. Callie, good to see you.
Good to see you all.
So, Callie, we now have a champion of abortion rights. That would be Melania Trump, which is interesting because her husband put the 3 Supreme Court justices into power that took away abortion rights nationwide. But here's a little sound from this video she posted. That would be Melania on X, where she promotes her belief in individual freedom for a woman's right to choose. Here she is.
Individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard. Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth. Individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean?
And the video is kind of a weird black and white thing where half her face is in darkness and half her face is in light. It's an odd.
It's artsy.
Yeah.
I guess.
That's what it's supposed to be.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this, Callie?
Well, first of all, let's just start with the overarching. She's selling a book. Let's start there. She's selling a book. So in this instance, you actually can't be quiet and sell a book. You have to say something. So for people who are saying, well, I don't know why she's saying it now, because she's selling a book. There was going to be, if not by whoever is her publicist, but whoever else, the book publishers were going to pull this out, obviously, and make a case of it. So she could have not commented, but then you don't sell the book. I think that I believe her that she says this is something that's important to her.
I do too.
So that I'm not questioning that at all. It's really down to the timing and the fact that she's articulating her difference and her big difference with her husband for the first time. Though we must remember that not that long ago, Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, was actually, that was his position.
Pro-choice.
So people forget that. But that was his position, and it was pretty strong for a lot of years before he decided that he would become politically expedient and go in a different direction. So that's that. What I find more interesting to me is his sort of almost non-comment about it. That is, he was like, well, you know, we've talked about it, and she has her own opinion. Since when does that fly with him?
Well, it went more than that. It was actually, I watched it last night, his response. It was, and this is saying something, it was his sanest statement about anything. But if you listen to it carefully, he basically says, I'm sorry we didn't ask for the sound, we should have. But he says something like, well, yeah, people have different opinions, they have to make their own decisions, etc.
You have to
and I'm watching,
follow
I'm saying,
your heart.
Follow your heart. That's called pro-choice.
Right.
You can't make your own decision if you're in a state that bans abortion, kind of thing. So it's odd. And, you know, did Chuck Todd say this? Somebody said to us they think it's totally strategic that because he's trying to soften, as J.D. Vance did, their position on choice.
Yeah.
So have the wife come out and do this, which may be on the edge. I don't. Does it? I mean, is that going to move?
Well. So what we know is that the only people in play are the people on the margins, right? So they're looking for. So if you follow all of the major polls, abortion, reproductive rights is around 3 on the top. So you've got your economics, you have your immigration, and then there's the reproductive justice. So the question is, are there numbers of people who will do sort of single issue reproductive rights first and then attend to the other things? Or there are people who are on the immigration economic who can be persuaded to push this up, saying to themselves, well, you know, she's in the White House with him, and she can continue to say, my answer would be, excuse me, she's been in the White House with him, and he didn't change his mind, nor the people around him. So that's a little dicey. But it does soften, to your point, it softens his opinion a little bit. But then you have to look at the messenger. Remember, she's the one with the jacket that says, I don't care, do you?
Yeah, that was the Hurricane Maria.
Right.
Also, she doesn't nominate justices to the Supreme Court.
Right.
Her husband does.
I get that. But if we're talking, the only thing at play here, if for people who are considering maybe this helps me, look at their team in a more soft way, is if people believe she has influence, right? With him on this issue.
Yes.
And it becomes clear that is not happening. It didn't happen throughout the process of picking the judges. It didn't happen throughout the process of the campaigns in which he has been not mean, nasty, lying about it and all the rest of it. So I don't know how it really works. But then again, she says in this book, apparently, because this is a quote, that she really disagreed and told him so and tried to get him from separating those kids from their mothers during that period of time. But yet she wore the jacket, I don't really care, do you, to the shelter. So it's very, it's almost a Rorschach test. You know, where are you as you view her in this and whatever.
You know what I thought was unbelievable about this too? The typical thing when you write a book is you want to be on different television shows, radio shows, wherever to promote the book. When CNN contacted her for an interview, she demanded $250,000.
Her publisher did.
Yeah. Yes, and a non-disclosure agreement. Well, I would suspect if her publisher, I mean, the idea that she didn't know this was what her
I'm not saying she didn't. I'm not quarreling with you.
And I think, God, you don't have enough money. You have to add for $250,000 and a non-disclosure agreement.
I don't even know what that means in context of this.
If you're going to do an interview, are you not disclosing the interview? Are you going to edit the interview? Or are you not going to disclose
she
where
gets
you
to
did
pick
it?
what she talks about.
You think that's what it meant?
That's what it meant. Yeah, she gets to pick
that is incredible.
Yes, of course, but that's how he operates. Why would that be any different?
Well, that's Bakari Summers. I love him. He's a great commentator on CNN from time to time.
Know where we met him, Marjorie? He was walking around the Newsfeed Cafe. He's a former state legislator from South Carolina who was here for a meeting, and he was walking around admiring the studio, actually. He was.
Wow.
That was great.
Well, did you hear what he called them both?
I did.
What?
Grifters.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I
loved it.
Yeah,
you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I will say I have heard, from people who knew both Vance and his wife at Yale, they were described as serious grifters.
Really?
So, yes. So
do you have any details?
We're not talking about it here.
Oh my goodness! The segment is over. We'll whisper it.
Let me add a note of history, which I was not aware of until I think it was Ruth Marcus who wrote this in the Washington Post today. And if it's the wrong writer, my apologies, obviously. But I think it was Marcus. She mentioned the fact that every single first lady, going back to Betty Ford, has been pro-choice.
Isn't that interesting?
And which I found really interesting. All of them, and every single one. And she mentioned that the only one of them who went public with it while her husband was in office, as opposed to after, which others did in books and things like that, was Betty Ford, who was a very outspoken woman, needless to say.
That's right.
And what was the name of the press secretary before? Was it Ron Nesson? Was that his name?
Oh, I don't
Whoever
remember.
he was asked, what do you think about this when President Ford is, pro-life, anti-choice, that sort of thing. And he said, he says, if you're asking me, if the President of the United States is ever going to tell Betty Ford what she should think about anything, you don't know Betty Ford. It was a pretty clever quote, actually. But that's an interesting little piece of history, I think.
I love Betty Ford. It was not just that, but it was about substance abuse.
Yes,
she had an
very
alcohol
public.
problem,
Right.
breast cancer.
Right.
She
Talked
talked
about
about
it.
these things. And remember, there was such a stigma about all these things. A woman with a drinking problem, that was very
She had to have
stigmatized.
a family intervention, remember?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it
so
was that serious.
I was a huge admirer of hers.
I would say one last thing about if people are thinking, well, this makes her a little softer about maybe some other issues that he's spewing and other lies. She was the biggest proponent of former President Barack Obama was not an American citizen, the biggest. And every single other issue that her husband has put forth, whether in the context of a lie or just, a kind of extreme position. I'm not talking about all of them, but some of the extreme positions she has supported vocally and publicly. So it seems to me that this is a concentration on a selling of a book. It makes it really odd that she's not said much at all during this whole election season. So, take it, you have to just try to figure out what's to be gained. And no one, and I know that the book publisher must know this, no one's giving her $250,000, not in the journalism. You can get that from maybe some.
I think the log cabin Republicans did.
Yeah, well, they're
didn't
not
they?
journalistic thing.
Yeah,
I bet you
that's
some of the
fine.
Newsmaxes of the world and others may pay her
maybe
for
they'll do
interviews.
that.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Yeah,
The National
CNN.
Enquirer does
Yeah,
it, but
right.
it's legitimate.
Can we come back local to a horrifying story here? This guy, Charles M. Morrell III, is a musician, and the headline in the Globe showed the great Shelley Murphy a couple of days ago. Black musician attacked by Patriot Front testifies during hearing. Could you tell the story? And when you're telling the story, there's a civil proceeding where there will be hopefully damages for this as best you can compensate it. If you have any understanding, we were all talking this morning in anticipation of this, it appears, even though there's video of this guy getting beaten up by these Patriot Front people, that no criminal charges have been brought, which I don't quite get. So fill in some blanks
I'm not
as best you
understanding
can.
the law on a couple of things.
Okay, go
couple
ahead.
of high-profile things. Okay, so he's walking along on the sidewalk in Boston's Back Bay. This is summer.
Right near here.
Yeah, summer of 2022. I don't think it says exactly what street it's on. But anyway, all of a sudden he was surrounded and beaten by these members of the white supremacist group that our colleague Philip Martin has written much about, called the Patriot Front. And he said, his quote is, "I thought I was going to die." I mean, he's 37 years old. He testified. He said he blacked out during the July 2nd attack. And then he later saw the news photographs showing that they had pressed a shield against his head and pushed him into a light post. It's really grotesque.
He's just walking down the street.
Yeah, he's just walking down the street.
But these guys all have their faces covered. They all have gaiters covering most of their faces.
He was on his way, it must have been close to here, to play the saxophone outside the Boston Public Library. And he saw this large group of men waving flags and marching to the beat of the drum, didn't think anything about it, and minded his own business. He's a classically trained musician and educator, so he was here to play. And then they were all dressed identically with khakis, blue shirts, sunglasses, baseball caps, wearing white neck gaiters covering most of their faces. That's in response to you. And the banner read, "Reclaim America." So I guess they just saw him as an opportunistic a person to attack, an opportunistic moment to attack this person. And they also called him Tar Baby, and I'm sure a few other things that did get put out.
And this man's life, it says in the story, has been totally turned upside down. He was doing quite well as a busker, making over $1,000 a week often, and now he has panic attacks.
Yeah, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's afraid, of course, to keep doing this because you would think, right in the middle of the Back Bay, right by the Boston Public Library.
Right out here.
Right out here.
But it reminds me of those attacks in New York. This one seems sustained, so it's a little bit different, where people are walking down the street and then somebody comes and just whacks them, and we don't know what that's about. But the thing about those, the difference is that those people, the attackers, usually walk on. Here they stayed in the moment and just kept doing what they did because they obviously were trying to make a point. So he brought a lawsuit, and is trying to get some recompense and have all of this addressed. But to Marjorie's point, He's got to deal with all of that. And to your point, I don't know. I don't get why.
Well, you know, Mayor Wu was here Tuesday, and
Yeah.
Jamie, if you remind us, we should ask the mayor if she knows why these guys, we may be wrong, maybe they have been charged, but if they haven't, when the video is as apparent as it appears to be, why he is not, they have not been
Well, more to the point,
criminally charged.
if you're walking down the street close to here, look how many people are on the street.
Yeah.
Some numbers of people saw something. And so
Another good
at the
point.
very
Yep,
least, you
you're
would
right.
you get some anonymous if people feel like they can come forward. Like, I would do something. I'm not understanding that either.
So can we go to a more upbeat thing?
Oh, Somerville?
Well, no, I was going, well, let's do Somerville next, and then let's
Yeah.
do some celebrity stuff.
You know, many people may know that Somerville, what used to be kind of a tough town, as we would say, is now like the hippest place
Hip and
anywhere.
happening.
But yeah, apparently Union Square, a section of Somerville, which has all these like white lights at night, Christmas lights and stuff like that, full of boutiques and restaurants. What was it called? One of the 38 coolest neighborhoods in the world.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy.
Who lives
isn't
a
it?
half mile from there, by the way? I forgot.
Oh, my daughter lives really close to
No,
me.
a little closer than that.
Oh, that would be you, Jim.
That'd be me. Thank you very much.
It always comes back to Jim.
Oh, my
As
God.
we know. Yeah.
Did you know it was cool?
It's fabulous. By the way,
Yeah.
I've lived there long enough in Inman Square, which is right on the border of Cambridge and Somerville, and Union
That's
Square.
another very hip neighborhood.
Is on the,
Ever
is
since
on-
Jim moved in,
is on the-
it used to be kind of a tough
oh my
neighborhood.
God. It's on the
But
corner.
now-
Is also on the border, Union Square on the other side. I don't think it used to be a dump when I moved there decades ago. And then a number of things happened. Some great small business entrepreneurs. There's this thing called Bow Market,
Yeah,
which
I
has
love that.
tons of little
Yeah.
stores, restaurants, bars, and this great little thing. A lot of great restaurants. And then, of course, the good and the bad news is the Green Line extension. Subway comes down. The good news is you can get back and forth to work. The bad news is the prices go up.
The Davis Square.
And
Dramatically,
squeezing out some of those mom and pop shops that we liked. And,
Yeah.
And making it. I couldn't believe that the average rent in the neighborhood is now $3,900.
I know. That is unbelievable.
That, I mean, I thought in Boston it was $2,900 a month. So this is.
And the
well,
average
it could
house, $915,000.
Yeah.
And boy, you're crammed in there in Somerville too. There's
Yeah.
not exactly a lot of space.
Well, do you know, there's another quiz for you, Marjorie. You failed the first one. What are the 5th and 6th densest cities in the United States of America?
I'm failing
I think it's Cambridge and Somerville.
Cambridge and Somerville.
Yeah.
I don't know which order it is, but it's
Yeah.
incredible. Considering neither are high-rise,
Yeah.
you'd think a dense city has to have high-rise, you pack a lot of people in an apartment building, but neither have many high-rises, but
No.
everybody's packed
Yeah,
in.
you're kind of, you could put out your hand out the window, and
Yeah.
your neighbor could put the hand out the window, and you could shake hands. But they're still pretty
By the
cool
way, I'm
place.
not putting my hand out the window anytime soon.
Okay.
Shake anybody's hand. Can we go to another upbeat
You know, with
story?
one
I'm sorry.
thing though,
Yeah.
you notice how Harvard Square has suffered? Because Harvard Square has become so generic. You know, it's got all the big
Yes.
Chains
stores.
and stuff.
I hate
Yeah,
it.
there's
and
nothing.
5,900 banks.
Does it have that?
Oh
No,
my!
it does-
It has a bunch
there's
of
a
banks.
lot of banks.
It's a lot of. I'm like, who has this money?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I just need
Well,
to
it's very
know.
disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to Davis Square or Union Square, you do feel kind of hip and cool. And
Yeah.
It's not
eating
just hip and
outside.
cool. There's lots of action, and there's a lot
Lots of action.
people from the neighborhoods mixing with people who come
Yeah.
visit. Union
Well, there's
Square,
a lot
in
of
all
action in
seriousness,
Harvard Square. It's just
Jim's
no,
actioning
it's not
over.
like it really is not like it used to be. And then Chan, who owns essentially all
Yeah,
of Cambridge,
sitting there, yeah.
the movie theater has been
Just
closed for
sitting
what,
there.
15 years?
Yeah, we could have been
I
going
mean,
to the
what
movies
is
there.
the deal? Enough
know.
already. In
Yeah,
any case,
yeah.
Union Square is great. Check it out.
Yeah.
And whatever. And,
Okay, what was the other upbeat thing?
the
you were
other,
gonna
well,
mention?
upbeat is I am one. You know this. I don't even care what someone's politics are. When celebrities decide to endorse people, and in the words of the great Michael Jordan, Republicans buy sneakers too. When he said he wouldn't get involved in politics, Rick Steves, the first time I met him, he was on my television show when he came here for the marijuana question. I said, you're going to lose a lot of customers, and he said, so be it. This is what I believe in. So here's Springsteen, who I assume is going to lose people. Here's what he had to say yesterday in a video about what he called the most dangerous candidate ever for president.
Donald Trump is the most dangerous candidate for president in my lifetime. His disdain for the sanctity of our Constitution, the sanctity of democracy, the sanctity of the rule of law, and the sanctity of the peaceful transfer of power should disqualify him from the office of president ever again. He doesn't understand the meaning of this country its history, or what it means to be deeply American.
And needless to say, he endorsed Harris Walls. I debate this all the time. We probably discussed it with you. Liz Cheney campaigns in Wisconsin, celebrity politician, obviously rock-ribbed Republican, with Kamala Harris yesterday. Do celebrities of either kind, political celebrities who do the counterintuitive thing, a la the Cheneys, or the Springsteens, does that matter to anybody? Taylor Swift?
No. Well, you know, what was interesting about the Taylor Swift thing, after she made her announcement, she lost, it's been documented, she lost a lot of folks.
I didn't know that. Followers?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
now,
that.
some have come out and said, I'm going to still enjoy her music, but, you know, I'm done with her. Others have said, I kind of sort of knew where she was coming from, even before she articulated, so what? I'm still voting for former President Trump. But, you know, so that's an interesting, we should follow that. So
but don't you think a little bit? I mean, now they're getting, you know, the margins because people are in one camp
Locked
or another.
in. Right.
And Harris has got a problem with a lot of young white men. Mm-hmm. Now, young white men are probably not that into Bruce Springsteen. It's older white men or
no, young. I've been to a lot of Springsteen concerts. There's a lot of young white men too. It's mostly 50s and 60s, but there are a lot of young white men.
But you do think of Bruce Springsteen. He's in the diner in his plaid shirt, and he's got the motorcycle.
Counting his $3 billion.
Yeah, so it might on the margins. Maybe with the white guys.
I think for her, probably the better support, and I don't know if there are any celebrities in that group that have not been mentioned, are the Bros for Harris. That group, you know, I don't know what the age range is in that, but they're pretty active.
Yeah, they are pretty active.
So
that's a very good point.
here's how I think that celebrities can help, not necessarily do. And that is, you're not paying attention, you're not paying attention. You know, we all are. Well, if you're not paying attention, you're not paying attention, then whoop, what did Bruce say?
Yeah.
You know, whoop, what did Zachary Levy, who's in Shazam and he just came out for Trump, what did he say? You know, it gets your attention. So, and I think it maybe is more effective if you make more than just a statement. He's very dangerous, but you need to say why.
Yeah.
Please know, women, this is going to happen, or please know if Zachary Levy is talking. I just think he's the greatest guy, and I don't care what everybody else says. You know, something substantive, because people aren't locked in, we know, until Labor Day, and then some people have been locked in forever, and then are not even open to thinking about it. So it's really that audience of those
and saying why you think it. For example, Elon Musk endorsed Trump, and he said he's as out of his mind as I am. I thought that was substantive. I thought that was really.
Well, but you're laughing. But I think that helps people listening to him evaluate for them the value of the endorsement.
That's right.
He's only got 180 million followers, Elon Musk.
Yeah, but
the Space Cadet Front, you know, he was appealing to them.
All right, so Callie, you're usually resistant to talking about the culture show in advance, but so let's make a deal. You can tell us everything about the radio show and a little bit about the culture show. Go ahead.
Well, our first big story is about a voting rights initiative that has been led by State Senator Liz Miranda. It's actually co-sponsored to try to get the voting rights for people who have felony convictions restored. In Massachusetts, you can get them automatically restored once you have completed your term. But there are a lot of people who are caught up in a system. Some don't even know they have the ability to vote, and others, she's like, let's be like Maine and Vermont and Washington, D.C. People never lose their right to vote. They can serve their time and pay their debt, but they don't lose their basic citizenship right. So anyway, there's a very interesting.
How come Trump can vote after 35
Well, that's
felony
one of the
convictions?
reasons why this is coming up again, because he has multiple felony convictions.
That's right.
So naturally, he should not be able to vote, particularly in Florida, which has many, many of those rules against it. But it depends on where your felony convictions were. His were in New York. New York does not have that, so he can, because of the way the New York bill is structured or the law is structured, he can carry that immunity back to Florida.
Right, it's not a felony conviction.
Yes,
that's
he should have done a couple
right.
of them at Mar-a-Lago.
The New York thing just protects him, so he can therefore vote, which is, as if you're looking at this, as the supporters of this effort are, isn't that patently unfair for all the folks who've been suffering? Anyway.
So what else are you doing?
And then you wanted one from the culture show.
We'd like one.
Okay.
Give us a break. Go ahead.
Jaylen Brown on the cover of Time, and just who he is. He's just such a bigger person than
one of the 100 most influential in the world, right? Isn't that why he's on the cover?
Yes, than being a basketball player of some note, and as you and I know, with the dewy skin. But
Hadn't noticed.
But But just what a remarkable young person.
I know
young guy.
he is a really neat person. Yeah.
In any case, Callie, great to see you. We'll be listening and listening. Thanks so much for your time.
Take care.
You will. This is where Marjorie, if she hadn't walked away from her thing, would say, Callie, we really thank you very much for being on the show. Jim, do you have anything? Oh, Marjorie, do you know how this works, by the way? This is, when
I was
we're on
running
the
over
air.
to get some gossip from Callie.
Okay.
After
By the way, in all
break,
fairness to her, she's only been doing this 25 years. There's
I was
no
so
reason.
excited about my Jalen Brown story. After a quick break, Regional EPA Director David Cash is going to be here. He's going to talk about some good news on climate change and the tragic updates on the horrific carnage from Hurricane Helene. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, more than 4.6 million Americans are barred from voting due to a felony conviction. But former President Donald Trump's felony convictions put the question of who gets to vote and who doesn't in the spotlight. The movement to restore voting rights for people with felony convictions in Massachusetts. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering teen and adult recreational cooking and baking workshops, series, and cooking couples classes for culinary enthusiasts. CambridgeCulinary.com. And The Trustees, presenting Halloween on the Hill. Attendees can celebrate the beauty and fun of autumn in Massachusetts at the Trustees Long Hill in Beverly. Advance tickets required. Learn more at thetrustees.org/Halloween.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tuesday, the mayor joins us for an hour. Mayor Wu for Ask the Mayor. We're joined now by David Cash. He is a noted poetry reader, and on the side, he's the administrator of the New England region for the Environmental Protection Agency. That's correct? Is it not administrator?
That's exactly right.
Nice to see you, David.
Great to
Cash.
be here.
How
again.
are you?
Wonderful.
Great.
Okay, we have a lot of good news things to report, which is good because I'm always having a nervous breakdown about climate change stuff. But I think a lot of us are really worried about what could happen if Donald Trump does win, since he calls climate change a hoax. And Biden, on his first days in, did a lot of executive orders getting rid of some of the stuff Trump did. I'm afraid that things could grind to a halt if he becomes the president again.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you both know, I'm a Biden appointee. The Hatch Act covers whether I can discuss the election, which I can't. And so, as many folks like me in the administration are doing, we see an end tape, and we're running to get our policies in place, and particularly at the EPA, to get our Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law funding out the door to communities that need it most, to get new clean school buses on the street and solar power up and wind up to make a real difference in people's lives. So that's the focus that I have. That's the focus my staff has at our EPA regional office just across the city from here. But that's our focus.
So if he wins, you had till January.
Yeah, I mean, that's as an appointee, sure.
Okay. I mean, for the money.
No. There's lots of the money is so much of the money is out the door already.
Okay.
Billions and billions of dollars are out the door already going to make these improvements in communities. I worry about New England, all over New England, but all over the country.
Okay.
So, by the way, any examples that I'm giving today about great things that are going on in New England, you can imagine maybe you have a cousin who lives in Nebraska, or a friend who lives in Oklahoma or in Florida or Hawaii. Same things are happening all over the country.
Okay. Let me just be clear, by the way, to rephrase Marjorie's question. You don't even have to respond to this. We weren't looking for you to say Trump's horrible, Harris is great. What everybody with whom we've spoken, Fred, Markey on down, says that money that is not spent or attached to a project as of January 20th, if Donald Trump takes over, could possibly be at risk. That's an issue that I think is agreement upon. One last national thing, and then we will get to some of the good news. Even if somebody who actually believes in climate change is the next president of the United States, the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. They've gone out of their way, in my opinion, I assume you agree, and I assume your colleagues agree, to make sure that the Environmental Protection Agency for which you work has less and less power to do its job and keep water and air clean. Is there a strategy within EPA within the bounds of the law to deal with that?
Absolutely.
What is
so
it?
as soon as the Supreme Court came out with its multiple decisions, our Office of General Counsel and headquarters and all the regional offices started putting their heads together on how do we address this. And your last comment was the exact right one. Within the current law, we are continuing forward on our regulations and our permits, et cetera. I mean, we're a law-based agency, science and law-based. We follow the law.
Okay, so can we jump to a good news thing?
No. Before we do, I have one more national question. Yeah. I think one of the scariest things about Hurricane Helene that just hit was that, you think, I think a lot of us think of hurricanes as coastal things. We worry about the Cape, we worry about Boston. That this hurricane did so much damage, I think it was 400 miles in North Carolina, which makes you think, we're perhaps foolish to think hurricanes are only coastal events now, that you can be damaged that far away because of climate change?
Not just hurricanes, but all kinds of extreme weather, right? Our floods in Vermont, and this summer and last summer, not related to hurricanes, well inland, not predicted, and huge damage to the towns of Vermont, to their wastewater treatment facilities, to homes and businesses. So, climate change is a real thing happening now. We can talk about wildfires and hurricanes and floods and droughts. And in a city like Boston, we can talk about the increased heat days and heat islands, increased asthma because of those. I mean, the intersections are huge. So it's urgent that we think about this as a problem that's global, that's national, and in our backyard.
Not just Vermont, Fitchburg. Look what happened a few miles here.
Same thing.
It's right
that's exactly right.
So we're going to do a little good news, then we'll jump back and forth with misery, and then we'll do good news. I'm embarrassed to say that neither Marjorie nor I even knew what a heat pump was until Bill McKibben was on our show about, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. And we're both looking at each other like, are we the only people who don't know? And we courageously said, we don't know, and he explained it. Everybody now knows what heat pumps are and how good they are for the environment. Alaska and New England, you're responsible for half of that, not the Alaska part, are engaged in this effort to deploy a lot more heat pumps. What does that mean in English, and how does it help people in our region who would like heat pumps but can't afford them?
Yeah, so heat pumps are these incredible devices that both heat and cool. And they use a technology that, like you, I don't understand. I'm not an engineer, but I know that they're incredibly efficient, 30 to 60% more efficient. So that means you'd save 30 to 60% on your gas bill or your electric bill, for example. And here's a really exciting thing. The Alaska and New England thing are results of the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, which was part of the Inflation Reduction Act, $5 billion. $5 billion. By the way, just to put billion in context, if you counted by seconds, it would take you 11 days to hit 1 million. Wow. And it would take you 30 years to hit 1 billion. Ooh, so this is a huge amount of funding all going out to communities. This grant that the 5 New England states, excepting Vermont, got is $4.3 billion to change oil heaters and electric heaters in over 500,000 homes throughout New England.
Who are the 500,000 homeowners?
So each state is figuring out how to do it, but they're going to be directed at folks where there can be the biggest impact for bills, biggest impact for local air quality. And so you could and by the way, Maine, northern Maine, cold Maine, has been a national leader on showing that this technology works in cold weather climates. And so just now imagine a family up in northern Maine that pays hundreds of dollars a month for oil now gets on a heat pump. More comfortable, easier to manage the both hot and cold days now that Maine's going to get, and lowers their bill. And here's the kind of cool thing about this particular grant, which many of the IRA, Inflation Reduction Action grants, have. It's meant to build the market, spur technology innovation. So if you're an HVAC, by the way, if your furnace goes now, you call up your HVAC person and they're going to be like, gas furnace? We got a gas furnace for you, of course. And you might say, well, what about a heat pump? And they might say, no idea. Part of the funding here is going to train up HVAC deployers, grow jobs, clean energy jobs in those communities, because of course you can't outsource those kind of jobs. Huge benefits all around. Win-win-win-win situation here. So that's what you need to know about heat pumps.
We're talking to David Cash, who's the regional administrator for New England for the Environmental Protection Agency.
Tell us about the school buses.
Oh man, I love talking about school buses. So this is a different program, national program, $5 billion nationally from the bipartisan infrastructure law, where school districts can apply for these funds to get rid of their old diesel school buses to get new electric school buses. And I don't know about you, I went to public school as a kid. I waited on the street corner and a stinky diesel bus came by and it smelled that sweet, acrid kind of smell. I didn't know that like particulate matter was lodging in my lungs and probably going to hurt me. I didn't know that. But we know that there are communities all over the country where high asthma rates, low income, black and brown communities that have suffered under these environmental injustices. And here we're targeting funds to go to the communities that'll have the biggest impacts, urban, rural, et cetera. And every time I go to an event where we announce these, I learn something new, some new benefit. So I was up in Nashua, New Hampshire a couple of weeks ago. 2 new things I learned. I was talking to a bus driver. Bus drivers love these things. And I said, why? He said, well, they're really quiet, so I can hear the dispatch radio, so things are safer. And then a teacher came over and said, actually, it's quieter so the kids are quieter. They're not yelling as much. And I used to be a school teacher, used to stand on the corner during pickup time. Terrible, right? And then Senator Shaheen was at that same event. She said, I'm sorry I'm a little late. I just came from the opening of a microchip plant in New Hampshire. And we know that that kind of development, that kind of manufacturing, which has grown by hundreds of millions of private investment, those are the chips maybe going into those kinds of buses, right? It's just like comprehensive approach to move into the clean energy future. That's all about lowering cost, gaining energy independence, getting all these side benefits. Schools not having, saving money on fuel and maintenance that now they can put into their programming. I mean, it's a huge win. So I love school buses.
Okay, so, and by the way, Mayor Wu has bragged about the 39 or something, growing a higher number, which I assume is part of that too. Can we go back to bad news for a second?
Sure.
Sure, okay, I own an EV. I can't remember what kind it is.
Yeah,
so
I
let's
can't
not
either.
talk about it.
I've never talked about it.
No, I don't remember the brand. But in any case, I was stunned to read a release this morning saying there are only 4 states in America which have an adequate, whatever that means, number of chargers. Massachusetts, laughable to me, Connecticut, Delaware, and Nevada. And at the same time, we read a few months ago, and hopefully you're going to say to me this has changed dramatically, $7.5 billion appropriated by Congress allocated to building, I think, 500,000 charging stations. As of March of this year, 7 of them have been built. And by the way, before you defend yourself, we were told at the time by whomever we were talking about, the fault in many cases is not on the federal government. The states are not, maybe it was you who told us, the states are not acting quickly enough. Is this getting better? Because, by the way, the fact that Massachusetts is in the good category to me is a joke. In any case, no disrespect.
Yeah, no, it's definitely.
Well, maybe a little disrespect.
It's definitely getting better. It's definitely getting better. We are in the midst of this transition. It's sort of like if you said, well, heat pumps are great. How come they're not in 500,000 homes right now? Well, they're not because it takes a while to figure out how to get the technology out there, get the utilities on board, get the electricians trained up to do this. And we are, year over year, electric vehicle sales are increasing by huge percentages. And we're seeing
the increase is slowing, and it's in part slowing because people have range anxiety over charger issues. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, of course, that's because we're in the middle of a transition, but the transition is happening. And as you know, because you're one of the owners, there's demand for them because they are cleaner, they're much less maintenance, there's no emissions, and it addresses those local air pollution problems as well. So we're seeing a big uptick in all of these kinds of investments, private and public, in infrastructure, charging infrastructure, and EVs themselves, in the move to medium and heavy-duty vehicles as well. So all of this is on track.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I know I'm one of them, are just waiting a year or 2 more so there are more charging stations before I trade in my car, which I've already paid for, so it's nice not to have a car payment and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, we don't need to know that, but okay.
Tell us about Governor Healy talking about buying enough wind energy to power over 1 million homes.
How exciting is that?
That's pretty exciting.
How exciting?
Yeah.
Why doesn't the audience think that's
You
exciting?
excited or not?
All right.
Well, there's more misinformation
I think that was
out there.
faux excitement, but thank you for participating. Go ahead.
There's more misinformation out there about wind farms. It's driving me absolutely insane because so many of my friends believe this stuff. But tell us about that and tell us why we shouldn't be worried about more blades falling in the water. And a company had to lay off, I guess, 900 people or something.
Yeah, so I don't think that was faux enthusiasm.
No, it wasn't.
I think
It
that
was
was
real.
real enthusiasm because the people in this audience realize, and people all over New England and all over the country realize that as we shift from fossil fuels to big-scale offshore wind, our air is going to be cleaner. Climate change is going to be addressed. Our concerns about flooding that we started this conversation with will be decreased because we'd be getting off of putting CO2 in the atmosphere. And as maybe you're not surprised to hear me say, there are multiple other benefits, right? We're seeing the ports all along New England and down the East Coast, down through Virginia, North Carolina, huge resurgence of economic development at these ports, huge thousands of jobs in this space as we need all the ancillary services to support offshore wind. And I don't know, I was taking the train down to New York 2 weeks ago to go to Climate Week, which we might get to talk about.
Train track's going to be underwater pretty soon.
Certainly that's one of the concerns. We have to figure out how to make our transportation infrastructure resilient. But I'm going through New London, and there are these monopiles right there at the port. And every one of those monopiles, I'm thinking, wow, how many jobs? How many jobs?
What's a monopile?
Sorry, that's one of the big, I'm glad you caught me using
okay.
like speak. It's one of the big posts that's going to go out in the ocean to hold the turbine. One pole. It's just one big pole.
Yep.
And they're tremendous. Again, each one of those represents so many jobs in the creation and deployment and maintenance of those kinds of things. So what's interesting about Governor Healey's announcement is Massachusetts, as you all know, has been a leader on this. So Massachusetts procures the electricity for all of you to use. And they cut a good deal so that prices will stay low, right? Of course, a wind farm does not depend on volatile fossil fuel costs because of wars in other parts of the country, of the world, or how the market is changing, right? The wind is a free resource. So we can predict stability of prices moving forward.
But if I may, it does depend on wind, though. And Joe Curtatone, who used to run something called the New England Clean Energy, and they changed the name, and we can't remember what it was. He was here yesterday. The Alliance.
Former mayor of a very hip.
Exactly.
Very hip, that's right.
He brought somebody in who's engaged in batteries for storage. Because some days there's no sun for solar, some days there's no wind, and some days there's too much. So you store. How are we doing on the battery?
We're doing great on batteries too. That's not an EPA funding, but Department of Energy is doing a ton of funding. And let me tell you I'm going to tell you two quick stories about that. One is, you might have heard of the Merrimack and Schiller coal stations in New Hampshire. They needed to come to EPA for a water permit because they use water from the Merrimack River to cool. And there were some problems with it. Through some really interesting negotiation with them, Conservation Law Foundation, they decided to shut their plants in the next 5 years. Huge. Last two coal plants in New England to be shutting down. But they had also been working with Department of Energy to turn one of those sites into like a clean energy hub. Batteries, right? All the transmission is there already. So as clean energy comes in from offshore wind, it can go into those batteries. Same story, by the way, in northern Maine. Huge area where old mills have polluted the area. Funding is going to turn that into a battery center as well.
You have only a minute to talk about the climate meeting in New York because we really want to hear your poem.
By the way, wind farms are not killing whales.
Wind farm, there's no evidence. There's no evidence.
Climate Week in New York. Give us a quick.
Oh my gosh, this was awesome. So as some of you might know, every year when the UN meets in New York in September, there's also a whole set of meetings, excitement all around climate change. Sometimes there are protests, sometimes there's panel discussions, et cetera. I'm just going to tell you two stories because EPA was there in force. The administrator, Michael Regan, made a great announcement of this new Environmental Justice Climate Corps. So think of Peace Corps, but domestic and dealing with climate. Phenomenal. Get a pipeline of people working. And by the way, I want to segue into the poem on this. So,
I love this transition.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
So here's one of the days I rushed around. I gave a talk at a couple of different places. One was with a huge advocate, environmental justice advocate here in Boston. His name is Dwayne Tyndall. He runs ACE, Alternatives for Community and Environment. And he and I talked about the importance that EPA places now in getting communities at the table so that our funding can go to what the communities want and need. Not top down, not the government saying you got to do this, but the government saying, what do you want? And maybe we can help with that. So that was one awesome conversation. And then another was, there was a youth summit that we held at Fordham University, an audience filled of 20-something-year-olds. And that was totally exciting, getting them at the table, talking about their ways that they can get involved. And I had to leave that one early. By the way, it was totally fun. My 87-year-old mother was there.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, came from Crosstown. My
Wow.
daughter from Brooklyn came there. It was awesome. And then I had to leave that meeting early and go to Amalgamated Bank, where I talked about how the funding that's coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act is going to spark huge private sector investment. Decrease risk for them, show the path forward. And so at one moment I'm filled with a room of 20-year-olds, and then I have bank executives. It was totally exciting. But here's my, is now the time to transition?
Yes, we're ready. We're ready for
So
Tom.
at the youth summit, we had Q&A, and one young person came up, raised their hand, stood up, and said, "How do you stay positive and optimistic at this time?" And I'm not sure you've noticed, but I'm a pretty optimistic guy. And I thought about that a lot. So here's the reading. It's actually not a poem, it's prose, but it's from Robin Wall Kimmerer. She is a PhD ecologist, works in New York, but a member of the Potawatomi tribe, which is from the Great Lakes. And she wrote this incredible book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is about the integration of traditional knowledge and Western science. So I'm going to just read a selection from hers. So she writes, "I choose joy over despair. Not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift. Despair is paralysis. It robs us of agency. It blinds us to our power and the power of the earth. But restoration offers concrete means by which humans can once again enter into a positive, creative relationship with the more than human world, meeting responsibilities that are simultaneously material and spiritual. It's not enough to just stop doing bad things. Here is where our most challenging and most rewarding work lies, in restoring a relationship of respect, responsibility, and reciprocity, and love."
Pretty beautiful.
Very
David Cash,
nice,
great to see
very
you
nice.
as always. Wonderful selection.
Great to be here.
Keep up the good
Give
work.
us the
Take
writer's
care.
name again, one more time.
Robin Wall Kimmerer.
Thank
and
you.
the book is Braiding Sweetgrass.
Okay.
Thank you, David
very,
Cash.
very
Thank you.
much.
Great
We've
to
been
see you.
speaking with the very optimistic David Cash, administrator of the New England EPA. Thank you very much, David, for coming in. Again, after a quick break, our text question of the day. Much like his tax returns, former President Trump is refusing to release his latest medical records. All day we've been asking you to weigh in by text. When we return, we will read some of your favorites. That is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, in a display of badassery, we're going to touch grass. Yep, those are just two of the 200 words and phrases that have been added to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And after guiding the Celtics to victory, Jaylen Brown leads yet again, landing on the cover of Time Magazine's 100 list. We'll look at how he became the NBA's most interesting player. We take on that and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Newberry of Brookline, a Kisco signature community, located on nearly 4 acres in Fisher Hill and providing independent, assisted, and memory care residences. Opening this fall. Learn more at lifeatthenewberry.com. And the MBTA Commuter Rail, providing public transportation service to over 170 cities and towns in Massachusetts. Just take the train. You can plan your trip at mbta.com/massbytrain.
Welcome back to Boston Public Library. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We've been asking you to text us your thoughts about Donald Trump's refusal to release his medical records. By the way, Harris hasn't released them yet. but she's new to candidacy. She says she will. Want to know if you have concerns about a presidential candidate, regardless of whether they're 80, 78, which is what he is, or 59, keeping that information private from the public? And also, does his attempt to keep his record secret have you a little skeptical of what he may or may not want us to see? Marjorie, what did the texters say?
Well, before I tell you what the texters said, Jimmy Kimmel, late night Jimmy Kimmel show, did this thing last night where, remember, the Republicans were constantly saying that Biden couldn't stand up straight and he couldn't get a word in edgewise and he was falling down over all his phrases, et cetera. What they did is they had a bunch of Republicans complaining about Biden, but then they showed Trump. So here is the montage where the attacks Republicans made on Biden's age could be applied to Trump as well.
He can barely speak.
We just set another stock rocket.
He can read off a teleprompter.
Shifting production to Thailand.
People need to step down. They're too old. We like to listen to AM radio.
He's old. He's really old.
They used to call it TiVo. Now they have TiVo.
President Biden is so divorced from reality.
Chuck Schumer has become a Palestinian.
Has Joe Biden really lost touch with all reality?
I'm a better looking person than Kamala.
Okay, well, that takes care of that.
Okay.
What are the texters saying?
So Lance and Lynn said, Trump's health is awesomely historic. Just asked him. I mean, we've never seen anything like it, better than anything anybody's ever seen. A lot of people, Jim, think there's no use in his releasing any information about his health because it would be as Michael from Bridgewater says, a complete work of fiction, or as Tony from Worcester says, why can we trust anything Trump releases about his health? Come on. But a lot of people, surprisingly enough, think it shouldn't be released because we have...
That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Here's Tom in California. I'm a physician. I do not think this would be appropriate. Medical records should be private, not politically weaponized. Why should the public know about every rash and treatment and minor exam finding? You know, the thing is, I think when you... Trump is not young. Even if he were young, Kamala Harris is a lot younger. I mean, we were all very concerned about John McCain. I think one of the reasons John McCain struggled in the election, not just because he was running against Barack Obama, but because he had multiple bouts with cancer, and Sarah Palin was going to be the vice president taking over. Something happened to him. That's why you want to know. Paul Tsongas, remember? Paul Tsongas, who was a great...
Didn't tell the truth about his cancer remission.
He did not tell the truth. I was a fan of his. But
and had he been elected, he would have died in office,
That's
by
right.
the way.
So I think that's a reason, especially since Trump has a history of problems.
And by the way, we don't care about a rash or whatever. If you choose, you're not required to run for president. If you choose to run for president, we're entitled to know what your health situation is. I think cognitive as well as physical. John in Beverly says Trump is afraid to let people know. Ronald McDonald is his primary care physician, which is possible. Remember, one of his doctors said he would be the healthiest president in the history of the world.
That's right.
Ronnie Jackson said he was 6'3" and 215. Remember what Chuck Todd said to us? He said, Jackson says to Trump, you want to be 6'3"? You're 6'3". You want to be 250? In all seriousness, independent reporters/doctors should look at the full records of both candidates, respect their privacy as much as they can, but alert the American people as to what the health situation is with the man or woman they're about to elect to the presidency.
I'm glad you're on the record. We do not need to know
I
about
am on the
any
record.
rashes that former President Trump has suffered during his life.
Maybe in his case we should.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. After the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be talking with Food and Policy Authority Corby Kummer. We're going to talk about Jim's still upset about liverwurst. And so
By
is
the
everyone,
way,
of course.
people died.
Yeah, people died. There's PFAS everywhere, and the political dangers of eating pizza and steak and cheese subs when you are running for office. It can be very problematic. You're listening to Boston Public.
Do your part to support the programs you love by becoming a GBH Sustainer. Sustainers make easy monthly donations that keep the news you trust on the air, month after month, year after year. Enrolling is simple at gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure. Proud sponsor of GBH's Beyond the Page with Danzy Senna, a live virtual event Wednesday, October 9th at 7. And Direct Tire and Auto Service. The team members at Direct Tire want to thank all their clients for 48 years of business. Tires, brakes, and complete auto repair. Direct Tire and Auto Service. Not just service, customer service.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Food policy analyst Corby Kummer discusses the forever chemicals that are apparently in everything everywhere that we drink and eat all at once. Is it even possible to limit exposure? Plus, of course,
dogs. What should be the punishment for them? Should they have to pay fines? Should they be arrested? What about the I'll use a bag but leave that on the curb type of people? Call or text next, hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. is coming off a month of job growth that turned out to be far stronger than what many economists had anticipated. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is posting a robust increase of 254,000 jobs in September, largely driven by gains in the services industry. Elise Gould, senior economist at the Economic Policy Institute, noted the BLS report shows there was little change in the jobless rate.
The unemployment rate ticked down just slightly to 4.1%, perhaps not in a statistical sense that it changed, but it did have a small tick down to 4.1%. That was centered around male unemployment, men's unemployment ticked down. We also saw a tick down in Black and Hispanic unemployment.
The unemployment rate and the number of out-of-work individuals are higher than they were a year ago. The strike at East and Gulf Coast ports has ended with a tentative deal to boost wages by 62% over 6 years. But the two sides still have to hammer out other issues, including a really big one, automation. Here's NPR's Andrea Hsu.
Harold Daggett, president of the International Longshoremen's Association, has made clear the union wants an airtight ban on automation in the new contract, a promise that union workers will continue to move shipping containers, not robots. The last contract already banned fully automated equipment defined as devoid of any human interaction. But Daggett has said that's not strong enough.
Semi-automation is automation. It's just the back avenue had to come in and give you automation without you knowing it.
Already, automated cranes are in use at several East Coast ports. They've helped those ports handle more volume. The union and the port operators now have until January 15th to work out an agreement. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
The foreign minister of Iran is visiting Lebanon, where Israel is carrying out a ground invasion. NPR's Ada Peralta reports Iran funds and arms the militant group Hezbollah.
The trip for Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, was not previously announced. It marks the highest-level visit by an Iranian official to the region since Israel assassinated Hezbollah's top leader and since Iran launched a missile attack against Israel. Araghchi landed in Beirut carrying tons of medical aid. In a statement, he said, quote, "The whole region should recognize the critical situation that Lebanon faces and its dire implications for the future of our nations." Hezbollah, which relies on Iranian money and weapons, has been weakened by Israel's relentless bombing. Its top leadership has been decimated. This visit by Iran's foreign minister is symbolic, a way for Iran to show it still has Hezbollah's back. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Beirut.
From Washington, this is NPR News. The U.S. Supreme Court is weighing whether a federal law blocks Mexico from suing U.S. gun makers. The Mexican government alleges that the manufacturers have enabled the flow of firearms linked to a wave of deadly drug-related violence in the region. But the defendants, including Smith & Wesson, argue they're shielded from civil liability under the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. The European Union has voted to impose tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The Biden administration in the U.S. made a similar move earlier this year. NPR's Rob Schmitz has details from Berlin.
The decision comes after months of debates between EU member countries that have a range of opinions about what to do about millions of low-cost Chinese state-subsidized electric vehicles poised to flood the European market and dominate local competition. Germany is Europe's biggest economy, and it does not support tariffs because it's worried about Chinese retaliation on German automakers, which make tens of billions of dollars off the China market. Countries like Hungary are also worried about starting a trade war with China. But France, Poland, Italy, and the Baltic states support the tariffs. A spokesperson for China says the EU is promoting unfair competition. The EU says it's looking for other solutions even as these tariffs are adopted. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour. The Dow is up 181 points, the S&P is up 29, and the Nasdaq has risen 146 points. I'm Lakshmi Singh, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Schwab, with Schwab investing themes like artificial intelligence, renewable energy, or pet passion. Over 40 themes to invest in. Learn more at schwab.com. And the Doris Duke Foundation.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Astronaut Sunita Williams is going to zoom in here to the BPL. She's not going to be here. You know why she's not going to be here?
I believe
because
she's on the International Space Station.
Yes, but she's going to zoom in to talk to us. She's with the other astronaut, and they're at the space station longer than they expected to be. That's October 16th. I think it's 11:40.
11:40. She'll be with us till 12 o'clock.
Okay. Go ahead,
That
Jim.
is pretty exciting. I have to say, I'm pretty excited.
Are you kidding?
About that.
I'm glad I'm not in the space station like she is.
Really?
Yeah.
Some people think we are in a space station, actually. But that's a whole different story. So from someplace back here on Earth, we're now joined on Zoom by Corby Kummer. He's a multiple James Beard Award winner, executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hi, Corby.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey.
Hey, Corby, so I'm very relieved that the dock workers strike longshoremen is going to be delayed, I guess, until January, or they're going to keep things as they are until January, because I was afraid I was going to run out of bananas in like 2 weeks, which leads you to wonder that that's a very precarious place for our whole food system that imports a lot of fruits and vegetables to be. Is that the best we can do?
There's so much precarious about bananas in particular, because the Cavendish is the name of the variety of bananas that are like 90% of all the bananas we eat and that are sold. And if something goes wrong or some invasive insect comes in and wrecks the Cavendish, which is big, easy to peel, tastes good, then the whole banana industry is completely up a tree, so to speak. So the problem with the longshoremen strike is that 75% of bananas, I think, came through Baltimore and eastern seaboard ports. That was the problem. And also an enormous amount of coffee. So the problem was breakfast. It was bananas and coffee. And there are these choke points. And if there's enough warning of a strike in advance, different shippers and Walmart and other companies can start trying to redirect shipments to the West Coast, to other main ports of entry. But, it takes weeks and months to turn around. And in the meantime, scarcity would begin, but more than that, prices would go up.
But isn't there like a cautionary tale in this? Not just what's our temporary fix when there's a strike on one or two coasts, but not on another. It's sort of, I was wondering if it's analogous. Remember when the microchips, big nightmare during COVID, and then all of a sudden we had the CHIPS Act and everything else, thanks to the former Rhode Island governor and President Biden, that allows for a lot of manufacturing being started here, including in places like Ohio and other kinds of things. Is there any long-term plan that would allow businesses, and in turn their customers who are dependent on perishable food kinds of things, to not fall victim to the decision that when an employer and the Longshoremen's Union can't come to agreement?
I have to take the right-minded foodie answer, which is stop eating bananas and things that don't grow in this country.
Well, that's a good
and
answer.
Stop being so reliant on coffee. Because, Vinland, I think, was the name of the terrific Portland, Maine restaurant that insisted on serving only food that was grown in New England. There was this movement for a while. Remember locavores? When's the last time you called yourself a locavore, Jim? You might have to start doing that again. So caffeine becomes a problem, but you just do without lemons. You know, that there's plenty of lemons in California and Florida, but coffee and most tea, not all tea, and bananas, you're right, you're just not going to have them.
By the way, if I knew what a locavore was, I'd call myself that. That's one. Two, I've told you this story before, but it's relevant now. I was at a Farm Aid concert a couple of years ago, and people know one of the board members is Neil Young, who's very political. And Neil Young, in the middle of his set, started talking, as he always does, and dropped about 4,000 F-bombs on people, saying, if the effing people in this audience don't end up buying every effing piece of food they eat from a family farm or a farm stand, then you're not welcome at our concerts or some such thing. It was fabulous. It was so fabulous. And he made the case with great detail that virtually everything, maybe not coffee, virtually everything that you consume is available in those sort of settings. Do you buy that?
Are you sure he didn't use the L word, locavore?
Wait a minute. You just kind of freaked me out there. You said we shouldn't be eating bananas because we can't grow them locally. I thought there were different versions of bananas that at least could be American grown. No?
You sound like you're in agony. What do you mean?
Because I love bananas.
Well, you know, Marjorie, it's because you're spoiled.
Marjorie, I love liverwurst. I've got a problem, too.
Yeah, liverwurst.
Speaking
my
of that,
God.
you know what the most troubling...
All we've heard about in the show, behind the scenes for like 2 weeks, is liverwurst.
Okay, we're going to hear about it again.
We're going to hear about some more. Go ahead, Jim.
We know that's what prompted the shutting of this huge Boar's Head plant. But, you know, I hadn't read backstories until last night. And by the way, you weren't listening to the earlier part of the show. But someone just made a note, Nicole, our colleague, said that Mike Lindell is selling local bananas. Which,
yeah, Mr. Pillow guy.
Okay, but I'm sorry I haven't read that. In any case, the horrifying part of the story, which I'd never read until last night, I'm embarrassed to say, I think it was in the Washington Post, but I'm sure it's been everywhere, is yet again, the federal food inspectors knew what a cesspool this plant was. Repeatedly, they visited. They saw mold. They saw leaking on open hams and all this sort of stuff, and they didn't do a damn thing. So while so many of us are addressing, and I'm sure the families of those people who died from listeria because of the contaminated liverwurst, they're upset with Boar's Head, as they should be. The government failed us too, didn't it, Corby?
First of all, none of us knew this story until last night or September 30th when the Washington Post published a long, really impressive investigative piece of journalism that there was dozens of interviews with people. They often showed up at the plant in Virginia and were escorted off the premises by security. You're not welcome here. So we didn't know just how bad it was, with black mold, with clear liquid dripping from the ceilings and being sprayed by fans across food. So it's shocking, the conditions of that plant. It really makes me rethink everything about Boar's Head, especially hearing about a whistleblowing inspector who was an internal plant worker who was fired, obviously not for cause, but because he was making trouble. And Boar's Head is, you know, a very thin, implausible claim about why they fired this guy. So it really makes me think about Boar's Head. But you, Jim, are right to say, why doesn't the USDA have more enforcement authority? And that's because the laws have, for the past 40 or 50 years, favored industry and said, industry can do voluntary compliance. They can run their safety checks and give us the paperwork. But as you might have noticed in this story, some of the paperwork was very disturbing. There are supposedly new algorithms that are supposed to flag this. They didn't. It takes months to get around to this. And the USDA, which was the regulator here of record, did not impose sanitation, pasteurization, and some much harder and more expensive rules. They kept saying, you know, try to keep things clean and give us a report every couple of months.
Well, then can I say one more thing about this, if I may? This relates to the despicable Ralph De La Torre with Stewart, who I believe is responsible for the death of people, the Sackler family, who are responsible for the death of thousands of people, the people who run Boar's Head. It is not credible to believe that the executives did not know of the conditions that you described. And if they allowed the conditions to continue because they wanted to make sure they kept selling liverwurst and ham to make money, then the families whose loved ones died, there should be criminal charges against these executives. They essentially executed, they're responsible for the deaths of these people. Is that not a fair statement?
Well, of course, and remember the peanut plant in,
Yes.
Georgia, where there were criminal charges
Yes.
finally? But it took years. This was an executive who knowingly killed people, and I think it was listeria also. I think it was listeria in peanuts. But that Boar's Head was willing to turn a blind eye and fire a whistleblower has made me think very differently from Boar's Head, and I had a high opinion of it.
So did I.
One of the things that has not gotten that much publicity from Project 2025 is talking about diminishing the power of agencies like the FDA,
Regulatory agencies, yeah.
like the Weather, NOAA, all those regulatory agencies, which is a very scary thing, because if you think that your food, there's no way to know whether your food is safe now, I can't imagine what this will mean going down the road. And it's all a result of big money in politics and lobbyists and these industry leaders paying all this money to politicians to vote against strengthening the rules. And when you look at Europe and you compare Europe to us, they are so far ahead of us in this kind of thing. It's really painful.
But it's not only that. Even when the Obama administration did pass a long festering and in the works Food Safety Modernization Act, it's never been funded by Congress. So even if you win the battle and finally move something through Congress that's supposed to make food safer, that was the FDA, which doesn't regulate meat. USDA regulates fresh meat. If Congress doesn't fund it, they're still powerless.
Yeah, it's really, as I've said a million times, I think Americans, we're really suckers in a way. We just let big industry get away
Well,
with
it's another
murder.
reason why Neil Young is right. It's not just because of the situation about importing food from elsewhere, but eating food that's manufactured in these mega companies. You can't trust that it's safe.
Well, here's another really depressing story. I'm sorry to be so downbeat here, but this is out of New Hampshire, Durham, New Hampshire. The New York Times reported about this family where the children were getting sick from so-called forever chemicals on the farm up there.
It's a terrible story, and it shows you that even buying local, you can be dinged. And here's the buying local. There's a wonderful family organic farm. I think their name is Dosty, raising beef and cattle and cows for milk that they sold to Stonyfield Farm, which only buys organic milk and is a great supporter of local New England dairies, also in trying to save many endangered family farms in New England. So in 2020, the family got a call saying, you have a lot of PFAS, PFAS, these forever chemicals in your milk, and we can't buy them anymore, sorry. So the daughter-in-law of this family, who lives in Durham, New Hampshire, thought sickeningly, my 2 young children have unusually high cholesterol levels. They're under 10, and they're not responding all that well to vaccines. Those are 2 of the most noteworthy side effects of ingesting too many of these forever chemicals. And it turned out it was because beef they were getting and eating from this main family farm, as well as milk, were full of these chemicals. And they thought these are the safest thing ever. They're our family, they're organically grown. What they didn't know is that sewage sludge, legal to use as fertilizer, had been spread all over the family land in Maine in the 80s and early 90s. So decades before, and that's what forever chemicals means. They haven't gone away. So that land can never be farmed again.
And we've heard about this going on out in the main places where we get beef and cattle from in the Midwest. This is going on all around the country, this fertilizer sludge that's contaminated with different kinds of chemicals. I mean, this is a huge problem for the food supply.
Right, it goes into water too. So PFAS are still around, and they're not as heavily regulated as they should be. There was a related one, PFOS, FOS, that has been banned, and so those levels are going down. But it's time to take much stronger action against PFAS.
So
by the way, there's a national organization, I just want to say, it doesn't deal with the food part of PFAS stuff, but deals with like household products that you have under your counter at home, Silent Spring
Silent
and Newton.
Spring.
You should check them out. They do wonderful work.
They've talked about the link between chemicals and breast cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a story in the New York Times from April 11th that people should check out. Forever chemicals are everywhere. Here's how to limit your exposure. And the first piece of advice, I think, is a little hard to comply. It says, don't eat or drink anything, which is really, that's hard. But
aside from that.
No, here, listen to this. By the way, I didn't know this. I bet you most people here. Did you people know that non-stick cookware is a real? Well, you're not. A lot of people are not. I didn't. I use non-stick and I use cast iron too.
Well,
but you shouldn't use non-stick at all.
You're walking PFAS now, then, Jim.
I mean, that's horrible. They say use cast iron, stainless steel, etc. Water filters. Avoid textiles. This I knew, that say they're waterproof and stain-proof, but don't claim to be PFAS-free. I'm sorry.
Limit your use of so-called combustible dinnerware. Those are bad too.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm the hugest fan of the writer of this article we're quoting from, Joe Fassler, because he actually broke this story. And he did most of the reporting that sounded alarms about PFAS in food products and food storage containers. So every couple of months, we just have to have a new reason to remind Jim, non-stick cookware, they're in raincoats, it's waterproof stuff. So think of anything that's waterproof as being probably dangerous.
Is there non-stick cookware, I assume some, that says affirmatively there are no PFAS, no forever chemicals in there?
I haven't seen that, and that's a very good thought, but I think you just need to sharpen up your elbow grease and get a lot of Barkeeper's Friend.
Yeah, and use a lot more non-stick spray or a non-stick
spray. Well, you don't have
spray.
to use spray and cast iron. I never used a cast iron pot till 10 years ago. It's one of the greatest things. Oh, stainless steel.
If you're making like fried eggs or something like that. Or you can
cast iron is great, and you can season it, and it becomes non-stick, your homemade non-stick cookware.
Yeah, aren't you not? You're only supposed to clean cast iron certain ways, right?
You don't use soap and whatever. You just use hot water and you scrub it. And then you dry it on the fire, and then you oil it, that's what the seasoning is, right? The oiling of it at the end of the thing? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, you can leave it in a very low oven overnight, or that's probably the safest way. But also, coarse salt, you can use that to brush out.
I didn't know that.
Food that's stuck.
Okay, so can we talk about I don't know if it's upbeat.
Yeah, we need something upbeat.
But when you're
here.
a politician, by the way, this story that we read about politicians, eat food everywhere. This is in the Washington Post. The title of which is "The Delicate Art of the Campaign Trail Restaurant Visit." They stated something that was so obvious to me, but then I realized maybe it's not obvious to everybody. You know why politicians do all this food eating in local restaurants and at pizza parlors, and in case of J.D. Vance, attempting to eat a donut in a donut shop?
I have no idea. One of the
because
guys?
that's what exactly.
One of the
it's
guys.
what real people do.
Yep.
They go to, so it's
Eat
the
pizza.
only it's not a speech, it's not a highfalutin thing, it's an opportunity to show that you're sort of like real people. Now here's J.D. Vance. He had a little bit of a hard time. Surrounded by a camera crew, walking into a donut shop a couple of weeks ago, trying to pour on that Appalachian charm. Here he is.
Hey, how are you? Good. The zoo has come to town. I'm sorry, Dave? Okay, yeah. She doesn't want to be on film, guys, so just cut her out of anything. Appreciate that, man. I'm JD Vance. I'm running for vice president. Good to see you.
Okay. By the way, I have to say, even though he was clumsy, in this one case, I feel bad for him.
So do I.
If you don't do advance work, your team, to say they're happy to have you, and which is obviously what you should do. You shouldn't just walk in with cameras to somebody's donut shop. I'm J.D. Vance. I'm running for vice president. Okay.
I don't want to be in film. Get away from me.
So as a food writer extraordinaire, this has been going on since time began, right?
Right. I mean, what was good about this piece is that it was saying the only relatable activity that most candidates can ever even try to perform is eating in a local restaurant and eating what people have. But if you don't have your advance people or yourself talking to the owner and saying, what's your most popular item? What do I need to have before I go? What do you want me to have? That was one of the ironclad rules there were actually two stories about food and campaign visits, and the other one was never eat on camera. Never allow anyone to show you eating. Eat it, take it away because your campaign is just too rushed. Go in and make nice with people and talk to them about their great lobster roll or jelly donut or cruller or whatever it is, but don't eat it because you'll always be dinged because you'll do it wrong.
Okay, how many people in the audience have ever had a cheesesteak in Philadelphia? Okay, not many, like 5. What kind of cheese? Yell out. What kind of cheese are you supposed to have on a cheesesteak? Do you know in Philly? You got Cheese Whiz. That's what you're supposed to have. Who is the politician running for president who I admire, who went to my hometown of Philadelphia, ordered a cheesesteak from the 2 famous place, and said, I'll have Swiss on my cheesesteak.
And Therese will have Swiss
Oh,
as
now
well.
you gave it away. She was not there. That was Secretary of State John Kerry. If you make a mistake like that, and who was that? We know John Kasich, who ran for president, cut his pizza with a knife and a fork in New York City.
Yeah, I don't think that was so bad.
That is
De Blasio.
De Blasio. Oh, because he's from Cambridge, not New York. He didn't know. Right, exactly.
Sometimes it's really
More than
messy.
that, he said, my family's Italian, and they eat it in Avellino, or I don't think they're from Avellino, but the southern Italy, with a knife and fork. So excuse me, I can do that. It didn't help.
Yeah, so here's the question about pizza. Do you have to eat it flat, or can you kind of
fold
it?
That's a good question.
And kind
But
of stuff it
again,
in?
this depends on what area of New York you're in.
Okay.
Or Boston, some fold, some don't, and you're just going to get in trouble. You're going to do it wrong whichever way you try.
Okay, well, they have to be very, very careful. I guess things did not go that well for poor JD at the donut shop. We
No,
feel
but
bad.
it's advanced work. You're supposed to do advanced work. So that's, I don't know if that's good news, but it's interesting news. And that's why they eat. And you can see them on television because you eat, which is one of the few things that you and... By the way, Tim Walz, did you see right after the debate, walked
went
down
to
the
a pizza
street,
joint,
went
yeah.
to a pizza joint in New York City after the debate.
Well, I think he was recovering from the debate. That was a difficult night for him.
You know, before you go, one last piece of bad news, and then we're going to dismiss you, Corby, is SNAP benefits are still being held captive in this Farm Bill. And I think you've told us in the past, in the old days, even in partisan days, one of the few things that Democrats and Republicans could unite on was farm bills. And obviously, those days are long gone by. Are food stamp programs for low and moderate income people at risk here?
They are. If the Farm Bill, which is already a year overdue and got continued for a year, but with no changes in funding at all, that was the deal to keep it going. If a new bill is not passed by December, that means that as of February, SNAP benefits can start being radically reduced because they continue for a month after the end of the bill, and the end of the current extension is the end of December. So the fragile but firm coalition that has ironically always kept SNAP benefits going is that urban politicians need them because so many of their constituents are on food stamps, and rural people need large votes from urban centers, so they would agree to this. Whereas the only thing they really care about are big industrial farms and subsidized crop insurance, which is the main farm bill funding for farmers. It's not the crop subsidies that are so notorious, it's crop insurance. But again, that's not for food crops, that's for cotton and soy and things that aren't, soy is not used for food, it's used for animal feed. And for ethanol. So this is held together, but I don't see any progress toward getting this passed by the end of December with the election coming. So it's going to be a high wire act.
We'll talk to you more about it in the weeks ahead. Corby Kummer, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
And you.
Thank you very
And
much,
you.
Corby Kummer. We've been speaking with Corby Kummer, a multiple James Beard Award winner, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. So a little behind the scenes here. We debated whether or not to do this next one because it is lunchtime. We didn't want to upset people too much. But there is a big problem in the hinterlands, Jim. People who don't pick up after their dogs.
By the way, in all serious moment, there's very little that enrages me about neighbors more. This is right in the top 5.
That's right.
It is horrible.
Jim insisted. I said we maybe shouldn't do it. Jim insisted that we do. So the question is, are we doing enough to hold careless dog owners accountable when they don't clean up after the little pooch? Should they be arrested? Is 3 to 5 at Walpole appropriate?
No one's talking about 3 to 5.
What do we need to do to get these people to stop? You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Last year's chaotic FAFSA rollout meant millions of students didn't get financial aid until the last minute.
That gave me another reason why, maybe it's a sign that I'm not meant to go to college. It was holding me back from so many opportunities.
How another delayed FAFSA is leaving students uncertain about their future on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Furniture Consignment Gallery, committed to the circular economy for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at FurnitureConsignment.com. And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting cancer care, sickle cell care, and beyond at bmc.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The mayor joins us on Tuesday, and an astronaut who's on the space station, Sunita Williams, is going to join us at 11:40 on Zoom, live from the International Space Station on October 16th. By the way, before I explain what we're doing here, Marjorie said we weren't sure if we're going to do it.
That's right.
Because is it inappropriate at the end of the day, etc. We have a listener whose name shall not be mentioned, who every day something we do offends her, and every day sends us a text. This is a true story, saying, "That was disgusting. I'm never listening to the show again." And you know what she does the next day?
She
sends us a text saying, "That was disgusting. I am never listening to the show again."
She'll be texting soon.
Today,
I'm
exactly.
on the lookout.
One of my favorite, I don't want to say your name, but thank you. The woman just raised her hand. It's me. That's pretty funny. In any case, over in Knoxville, Tennessee, this is a real issue, by the way. It's not intended to be a provocation. There's a 21,000 square foot testing lab called BioPet that can identify a dog's DNA with 99% accuracy. They call this service, true, poop prints, P-O-O-P-R-I-N-T-S, poop prints. That's proven helpful for the pettiest landlords in America who are using poop print to link stray sidewalk droppings to the dogs which created them, and owners, for whatever reason, be it lack of courtesy or forgetting to bring a dog bag, left it on the ground and didn't clean it up, which to me is, I'm serious, a cardinal sin. And our number to call or text is 877-301-8970. I hope we can all agree not picking up after your dog is disgusting. It is inconsiderate, and I think worthy of some kind of accountability. So the question is, what length should the average person go to ID the culprit? Is DNA testing a step too far? I think not. What steps have you taken to ID the person who didn't clean up? And once you found out, what'd you do about it? 877-301-8970. You as worked up by this as I am?
Yeah, because I've had dogs in my life. Right now I babysit a lot my daughter's dog, and I had a dog for years before that, and a lot of people don't do it, and it's very annoying. But you know what's interesting? In these big apartment complexes where they have 200 apartments or something, they require you to get a DNA. If you have a dog, you have to get a DNA test for your dog, so that they can identify whose dog belongs to which droppings, and then they fine you. In one of these places,
as well they should.
They fined you $500 at this place in Texas. It's a 190-unit property in Hickory Creek, Texas, with about 100 dogs. So they call you in and they say, "This is your dog and this is your DNA. You're going to pay me $500, and then they'll make it even more than that if it goes above that." But the person said, which is kind of interesting, that it's never the people you expect it's going to be. You're always fooled. The loveliest people are doing this, and then they try to lie and they blame their kids, or they blame the dog walkers.
Or I didn't have a bag. And if you don't have a bag, which is when I've caught a few people doing it, walking away on the spot, the line is always, "I didn't have a bag." In which case, you should say that I assume once you get your bag, you're going to walk back and do what you should do. 877-301-8970. In terms of unneighborliness, this is really right up there in terms of the crass, inhospitable, unkind, whatever. Did you ever do it, by the way?
I'm sure that there are times when I was out at night and I did it, but then I tried to go back the next day in the daytime. Sometimes you can't find it in the dark. So you have your phone with a flashlight.
I always carry a flag with me, and whenever I put a flag right in the... Can't find it. Go get a
But
plastic
at least I
bag
had
and
a
go
little-
right back and get the damn
but
stuff.
but sometimes it's nighttime and you're nervous. You don't want to go out and do that, and your kids are in the house and all that kind of stuff. But I had a little dog. You know, if you get a Great Dane,
No, that's a good point.
I mean, you're really
It's like
talking.
a horse.
We're talking a big problem there. We're getting swamped by Texas already. Obviously, this is a
Did you
big
say
problem.
by Texas?
Texters.
Oh, texters.
Texters, yes.
Texters, yes.
Special place in hell for people
Yes.
who don't pick up after their dogs.
I love this.
Especially in school playing fields or near school
Yes.
sidewalks. The elementary schools, I live right next door to one, with the kindergartens. This is horrible.
Yes.
And then DNA testing, which they do in a lot of these places. This is from Matt in Cumberland. I work in property management, and you have no idea how many complaints we get about pet waste. This is a helpful tool. They talked about how one guy that works in property management, he's talking like buckets full every week when he
nice.
goes in to clean the
Okay.
place up. Oh, God, I'm sorry if you're eating lunch.
This first caller, her husband is my hero. Joanne in East Greenwich, tell us what your husband did there. Hi.
Hi, yes. This happened about a year ago, and of course there was a time in my neighborhood where, people just never picked up after their dogs, and everybody has a dog in the neighborhood, and they always come down our street. And so what he did, he saw a neighbor up the street. The dog went into the yard closer to the road, and the dog did his business, and then they just left. And so a little while later, my husband wasn't angry at all, but my husband said, oh, well, I know how to deal with this. So he went out with a dog baggie, and he picked it up, and he delivered it, and he put it in their mailbox.
Oh, my God. Be still my heart.
I know.
Are you okay with that?
Oh,
I
my
assume
God.
people are going to be offended.
Yeah.
That's exactly the right thing to do.
So what happened after that, Joanne? Did they have a confrontation or a meeting of the minds or what?
I do not know the rest of the story. I'm not sure they even saw him do that. They probably certainly knew, they saw that this happened. I'm sure the mail carrier saw it as well. But I don't know that nothing was ever said. Like I said, my husband wasn't angry. It was just him being kind of funny.
Well, I love your husband. Send him our best, and he's my hero of the day. Thank you, Joanne, very much for the call. 877-301-8970 is our number.
Elizabeth from Medford is raising this to another level.
What's that?
She says, okay, so you've got the little bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should you bring it home to your own garbage bin, or can you leave it in a neighbor's garbage bin?
Well, I have to plead guilty to.
Yeah.
When I have walked one of my kids' dogs, I don't have a dog, but both my daughters have dogs. What is wrong with that? If it turns out you put it in somebody, as long as it's in a bag and it's tied up.
People don't like it. They don't like it.
Okay, they don't like it, but what's objectionable about it? It's tied up, so what's the deal?
I don't know. They just don't like those. They don't like anybody else's dog stuff in their garbage bin.
Okay, so here, Larry David,
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about something like this, our staff immediately says, Larry David must have talked about this on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and 99 times out of 100, you'd be right. So here it is. Here's where he falls on the dog poop pickup debate. This is from an episode, obviously, of Curb. Here's Larry.
Okay, this is the dog. This is the dog that's been going on my lawn. No bag?
Well,
Where's your bag?
life, it gets so crazy sometimes.
Oh, life gets crazy?
Yeah.
If you're gonna have a dog, you have to have a bag.
I will bring a bag. I didn't bring a bag today. I'm really
Because
sorry
the
about
dog
that.
without the bag, it's incomplete. It's a marriage, the bag and the dog. They go together.
Just don't see why you had to yell at me.
I'm yelling for society, for everybody.
He is. I consider him to be yelling for society, for everybody. 877-301-8970. So before we get back to the calls, you don't live in a complex or
I
whatever.
don't.
You live in a house.
Right.
If a homeowners association on your street came by and said, we're all going to agree that everybody on the street has their dog DNA tested, so we know the DNA, so no one doesn't do this, would you participate if you had a dog?
Sure.
So would I.
So would I.
And by the way, the likelihood, if you knew that they had your dog's DNA, of you being irresponsible like this goes down to almost
Absolutely.
zero, right? Okay.
This guy that runs this luxury Chicago area property that uses this poop prints thing, the DNA thing, said it's really exciting to catch somebody who's been misbehaving. The guy says, remember Maury Povich, who used to be on TV, used to go catch all these deadbeat dads all the time with DNA evidence? Dave O'Barr from Chicago says, I feel just like Maury Povich. It's so exciting to catch these
Is he
people.
Connie Chung's husband?
Connie Chung's husband, that's right.
Husband,
Yeah.
Okay. Here.
Ann in Lincoln.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, yes. Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I
I'm calling about this issue of putting the bagged dog poop in somebody's garbage bin.
Excellent.
And here's the problem, Jim, and I can't believe you're an offender of this.
I am an offender.
You are. So I put my bins out, by the street, and when the garbage is gone, the trucks have come. The bins sit out there, perhaps much of the day empty. So dog walkers will come by and throw their poop bags in there. But here's the problem, and I bet you've never thought about it, and I want everybody else out there to think about this. When you then add your garbage for the next week into that bin with that little poop bag sitting in the bottom, and maybe you put 40, 50, 60 pounds of garbage.
That is correct, Dan.
Yeah, what happens?
What do you think is going to happen to that flimsy little poop bag in the bottom of your bin?
It breaks.
It breaks. And whose problem is it then that you've got dog excrement all over the bottom of
That's right.
What was a pristine bin?
How about that, Jim?
Well, can I answer, Ann?
Inexcusable.
That's why I've never done that, actually, because of that. I have to admit, I haven't thought of that problem. And Ann, I want you to know, Marjorie will not believe this, but I hope you will. I will stop the practice because I'd never thought it through. As Jamie, what are you making a face about? What are you making a face at me? I'm telling you, I'm going to stop doing it because Ann made a very compelling argument. Ann, thank you for an excellent call.
You get your own, I guess they're made of stainless steel, the silver trash. What are they made of? Stainless steel ones? I think so.
Can?
Yeah, you get your own can.
A stainless steel trash can?
For your dog's stuff.
I've never heard of that in my life.
Yes, and then you put a big container in there to line the thing, and then you put the bags in there, and you're not, doing terrible things.
Who's got that?
I did. I have
You
for
have
years.
a stainless steel garbage can outside?
I had it for years, the side of my house. Small.
I never heard of that.
Small for the dog stuff. Yeah. Then you don't have to worry about who's looking at you, dumping stuff like Ann is in their garbage bag.
Well, Ann was not looking at people. Ann had a good analysis of why it's a problem, and I'm sorry I did what I did. I apologize.
Okay. Let's go to Meredith from Framingham. You should
Meredith.
apologize to him.
I did apologize. Go ahead. Hi, Meredith. Hello. Sorry.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi.
Very sorry. Go ahead. Meredith.
Okay, so this is a story from, it happened about 20 years ago.
Perfect.
It stuck
Perfect.
with me
I like this.
I'm still angry about it.
Good.
So I had a new boyfriend, and we were going to visit his best friend. So I was trying to, kind of make a good impression.
Sure.
And we get there, it was nighttime, and we walked across the front lawn to get to the front door. And so we go in, and we're hanging out for a while, and then, of course, somebody makes that face. And somebody had stepped in dog poop. So everybody looked. Of course, it's me.
Oh, that's very sad.
So, right, but it was their dog, and it was their front lawn.
Ooh.
And the guy got mad at me. So I'm still mad about it.
Well,
it
by
was
the
his
way,
dog, his front lawn.
this is sort of who is
nice.
the a-hole? The answer is it's the dog owner.
Absolutely.
He was upset because you stepped in dog poop that he had left out on his lawn?
Yeah.
I mean, really? I would harbor a grudge for 50 years if I were you, not just 20. What happened?
Probably still will.
What happened to the guy you were dating that night?
Well, it didn't last.
Okay. Now, did he come to your defense?
No, I don't think because of that.
I understand. Fine. So, what did he come to your defense or no?
I think it was awkward for him. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he came to my defense. But
I don't think
maybe
so.
got a little bit too. I might have shown my true colors a little bit.
Meredith, can I tell you something? I hope you
he
know.
might have seen something aside of me.
I hope you know that I'm telling the truth when I say this. I so admire you for being angry about this 20 years later, because that's my kind of living. So, Meredith, thank you. Excellent story and excellent grudge to hold.
A lot of people are very upset about another thing I hadn't thought of,
What's
Jim.
that?
In addition to whose garbage bag do you dump?
Garbage
or
can.
whatever it is, trash
Whatever it is,
bag,
sure,
bin,
yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
That people pick up the mess and then leave the plastic bags on the curb, at the end of the street.
Well, that's just as bad.
What are they doing that for? But haven't you seen that? I have seen that.
I have seen that.
I've seen that. What's up with that?
Yeah. Was that? Oh, I'm supposed to answer that?
Yes.
Well, then let me say proudly, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming if you put it in a bag, you sort of subscribe to the notion that it needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
And putting it in a bag and leaving it on the sidewalk or the street is not clean. This must be critical of me, or
No.
you wouldn't be laughing.
No, it's not.
What is it?
This is an anonymous texter. I put a sign on my yard. If your dog poops on my yard, I'll bring my children to poop on your yard. How about that? And then somebody's
We're the only
concerned
ones
about the
laughing out
plastic
of,
bags, but you can get the biodegradable bags. They say they're biodegradable. I hope that's true. You
But
get
you
those-
said all that stuff, though. You're the one who says the little symbols on the bottom of the recycling are BS, too, right?
Well, the ones I've seen, these green ones, they have a number 1, or maybe it's a number 2.
Well, I mean, it's good to know the number that
Well,
works.
1 or 2. 1 or 2 is good.
1 or 2, okay, fine.
It's 3, 4,
One's
5,
good,
6,
one's
and
bad,
7
the
are
other-
scams, but 1 and
Whatever
2
it
in
is.
Massachusetts.
Okay, so some number is really not true, and the other number is. Whatever it is. We don't know what the number is, but whatever.
Diane in Fairhaven, thank you
Hey,
for
Diane,
calling.
nice to talk to you. What's up?
Hi, guys. I have 2 quick things, one good, one bad.
Oh.
My neighbors who have a very big black lab and they walk a usual route,
Yeah.
and they're very careful. They pick up stuff. Not
Okay.
only that, very proactively, they tie additional bags around like the signpost of a
I love
stop
that.
sign
I've
or
seen that.
something like that.
Yep.
And that's awesome.
It
now,
is.
the bad thing is, my own son, who you have met,
Yeah, we have.
I caught him once doing this. He does at night on the 10 o'clock walk what he calls the fake pickup, in case the neighbors are watching. So the dog will do her thing, and he'll bend over as though he's scooping it up and tying a bag and what all. But he's not. It's a total fake out. And I'm like, you little jerk. And so I haven't been able to monitor him in a while. I'm about to get a knee replacement. But I'm like, do not be doing that. That's just wrong. But yeah, the fake pickup. Oh.
Maybe
I'm
you should
sure
just
he's
have a
not the only
GoPro
one.
attached to all of his clothing. Diane, thank you for the call. I have to say, I want to admit this, but don't attack me until I finish the thought. I have done what Diane's son has done when I didn't have a bag and I know someone's watching me from the house next door. I will do the fake pickup, because I've been yelled at once when I didn't have a bag and I was going in to get it. A fake pickup to satisfy the person who's glaring at me, and then I go get the bag and do the thing.
You
'Cause
told me you had flags that you placed.
I do have flags. I carry them. It's cumbersome. I have, ordinarily people put arrows in those things on their back. I have flags that I put. By the way, that is in your defense, it is very hard when it's late at night.
It is hard.
And
that's why you
even
have a
with
flashlight on your phone.
I know.
But it can be difficult.
Well, it's not why
especially-
you have a flashlight on your phone. It's one of the things.
No.
Why did you put, what's that guy's name? Who's the head of Apple now? What's that guy's name?
Oh, Tim Cook.
Tim Cook, or Tim Apple is Donald Trump. Remember when Trump called him Tim Apple in the White House?
No, it was Steve
Was it?
Jobs. It was Steve Jobs. He had a Great Dane, and he knew the problem, so he thought he was thinking ahead, Jim, for the Apple phones of the future. And
He said, now I know why we need the flashlight
That's right.
in our phones.
Now, I did not realize that this is an issue, but Andy, the mailman, says, do not make your letter carrier a collateral victim. We never forget, and word travels fast on the post office work floor.
You mean if it turns out that they have a house they have to go to where the person doesn't pick up well, wouldn't you be the same way if you were a mail person?
First, I thought they were putting it. People were leaving it in the mailbox, but that would be
well,
horrible.
that one husband did in that individual case in East Greenwich. Yeah. Let's go to Peggy in Wareham. What's up, Peggy? Hi.
Hi, Margie and Jim.
Hey, how are you?
Long time, first time.
We're thrilled. Thank you so much for doing that. What's up?
Well, I'm a regular hiker, and I honestly cannot stand those who bag their dog poop and then leave it.
Yeah, what is up with that? It's weird.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. If I'm hiking and I don't have a bag, which I always carry them, I flip it and get it at least off the pathway.
What do you mean what the dog left behind? You push off the pathway, so it theoretically.
Exactly.
Well, that's very kind of you. I think a lot of people feel I didn't even think about the left bag thing. That seems to trouble a lot of people. Peggy, thank you for sharing that. Jim in the car says, I lost a girlfriend of 5 years because I would not clean poop for her Saint Bernard. Good riddance to them both.
Oh, God.
She says. Now, that's a tall task.
Okay, this is from Kate the gardener. Straight to jail for the dog poop leavers. I have stories for days about this. I'm a gardener at high-end properties, and it's crazy how many very rich people do not pick up after their dogs, and it's so gross. In Watertown, our town councilor actually had to ask people to pick up after their dogs. I also had a neighbor who didn't pick up after a dog in our shared front yard, and my housemate picked it all up in a bag, rang the doorbell, and handed it to her.
I mean,
she always picked up after that.
you're much kinder than I. Do you not get pleasure out of that, despite you being a kind
Yes,
person?
I really like the idea of
Present it.
the poo prince people. They always try to blame somebody else. They first say it's not their dog, and they say, well, it is. We have the DNA, just like the deadbeat dads. It's not my baby. Well, yes, we have your DNA, so it is yours. And then, as the person said that runs this big apartment, it's not the people you'd expect.
Well, what does that mean? I mean, I don't even know what that means.
Because I think you have a bad idea, people who run around not picking up after their dog.
Meaning people would think it was me.
Right,
Obviously.
exactly.
And it's not. By the way, an anonymous texter says, which is a great idea, because these are cheap, I wear a headlamp. It's like, no, but seriously, you can buy those headband things.
The miner's hats.
No, not a miner's hat. They have like those little cloth bands that are elastic you put around your head, and you have this little light kind of thing. That's an excellent, no, I'm serious. What is so funny about that? What's wrong with that?
No, I have an image of you with a
and
light
Jamie
flag.
just said it's for kids during daylight saving time. I mean, that is my position about the mornings, the dark mornings, if we had permanent daylight saving, is you give little miners' hats with lights to all the kids when they're waiting for the school bus.
So Junior's got his miner's hat on it, and he's got his flags with him as he's walking around the neighborhood.
Small
I find
flags.
This hard to believe, absolutely.
Do you want to take another call?
Yes, let's go to Chris in Rentham. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Chris in Rentham. Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't want to be that person that leaves it. So I've been on a walk. The bag is ripped. I've run home, jumped in the car, driven back, and picked it up. But of course, I washed my hands before I got in the car. So, but a funny thing my son did, he took him to the dog park. We don't have a barrel, so I said, you have to put the bag, you have to pick up, and you have to put the bag on the back windshield wiper of the car. And then when you get home, you throw it away. We have one of those pails, Jim.
Yeah.
The thing that Marjorie mentioned?
Yes,
I never even heard of it.
Somebody just texted, Lisa in the car said, a little aluminum tight can, a small one with a tight lid, and you put that next to the trash barrel outside.
Okay, keep going, Chris. You're doing well there. Go ahead. Was that it?
He neglected the wiper part. So I didn't drive this car all the time, and I got in it about a couple of days later. I'm like, Jesus, Mary, what's that smell? And I take it to the car wash, and I'm cleaning it, and there's the bag inside the car.
That is bad.
Oh.
So what'd you do?
So I was like, what are you doing?
What is he doing?
When I got home, I said, he goes, you told me to put it in the car. I said, no, I said put it outside the car and then throw it away.
Yeah, couples therapy. That's my advice. Chris, thank you for the call. That's a really interesting question, Marjorie. Let's assume you're out on a walk or something. Okay, Marjorie's. Go ahead. I forget.
My ex-husband once threw the poop bags in our garage instead of in the trash. The next day, the movers came to pack our house for interstate move, and they packed all the poop and moved it to another state. That summer, we were divorced.
Well, that's actually good. So can you address the thing that the woman who just called said? Let's assume you're out walking, which you walk a lot.
I'm a big walker.
You're walking your kid's dog, and you do the bag thing.
Yeah.
And you drove to a place. That's better.
Yeah.
You drove to a place just like this woman who was hiking, and the dog does the whatever.
Yeah.
You put it in a bag. There's no receptacle to put the bag in. What do you do with the bag?
Take it home.
How? That's her point.
In the car.
In the car. You put it in the car.
Maybe you could put it in the trunk, Jim, if you're that fastidious. But having seen your car, I know that you are not. Jim has mushrooms growing in the back
No, that
of
was
his
my old
Tesla.
car. I do not, actually. That was my last car.
Do we have time for one more call?
We do another call.
John and Lawrence, thank you for calling.
Hey, John and Lawrence, what's up?
Hi there, folks.
Hi.
Hi.
You know, I think this might be one of the most silly conversations I've heard.
Thank you. You're never going to listen to the show again, I know, until tomorrow. Go ahead.
No, listen, because I remember, I didn't grow up on a farm, grew up in Devon. And I remember, we all had dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs. You let the dogs out to play like we used to let the kids go.
Yeah.
They would actually be like a little packs running around.
Yeah. So what's the point here? Yeah. What are we saying?
Well, the point is this. All the time growing up, I never heard anybody complain about dog droppings. And the only person who got in trouble was me if I tracked it in the house, and my mother would say...
Well, that's when men were men and whatever were whatever. So is your point that in the old days you just left it lying on the ground, or what happened?
Yeah, in the old days you did, and you were always in it.
You didn't just leave it lying there.
What do we do?
You mowed the lawn once a week, and it became fertilizer. The other thing is, I think this is a problem because everybody is walking around looking at their phones so much.
That
they
is a
don't
good
watch
point.
what they're walking in.
No, that last point is an excellent point, and thank you very much for sharing that with us, John from Lawrence. We appreciate
But I
that.
think one of the things is, it's one thing, you sort of at a neighborhood, single-family homes, few people have dogs, most people don't have dogs. These are talking about apartment complexes with like 200 units and 400 units. And remember what during the pandemic, what people did? They went out and got puppies, right? That was the big craze.
Don't you think also, if you live in the city, that having a dog the size of a small horse is a problem?
Well, where did this start? It started in New York City. Remember the pooper scoopers?
Oh, sure.
Long handles
The little
on
thing
them.
where you clamped them and
Yes,
whatever, yeah.
Yes, it was a New York City thing.
Okay. Here's an anonymous texter. Go
here
ahead.
it is.
It's the same person.
This topic is the worst, not up to the standards of your show.
That's
and
what she
certainly
said
not
yesterday,
NPR.
too.
That's the line. It's not up to the standards of our show. Please elevate the topics
By the way, it's
in
not
the
up
future.
to the standards of NPR.
Not up to the standards. That's
Exactly.
right. We'd all appreciate it, and I will never listen again. Text you tomorrow. Love and kisses.
That's pretty.
Okay, is Jared Bowen
around?
showing
Where the
up
hell
or
is
is he
he?
not showing up? We don't know. Jared's
Okay,
supposed to show up
Jared
now.
on the. I'll play Jared on the Culture Show today. What do we have again? Edgar is hosting today. Edgar, where the hell are you, Edgar?
We
Edgar,
don't
get
know.
out here. Are
Edgar's
you here?
not here.
He is.
Oh, he's disappeared.
He is.
He's supposed to tell us what's happening in the
Edgar,
Culture Show.
We are otherwise known as Jared to us in this particular set.
That's
Edgar
Edgar
B.
B.
Herrick
Herrick
III. It's wonderful to see
The
you.
Jared Bowen JV team has arrived.
Well, I wouldn't quite go. What exactly are you doing in a minute this afternoon?
Well, we're going to be talking about the things that happened this week that caught our eyes in the arts and culture space, including remembering some big figures who died this week.
Chris
including
Christopherson?
Chris Christopherson.
Oh, I love Chris Christopherson.
Pete Rose. I know you're a Philadelphia guy, Jim. So
I know, won the World Series. I'm not a huge Pete Rose fan, but I am a
it's easy
huge
enough
Chris
not to be big.
Christopherson fan.
And, as well as John Amos, the actor
I
John
know,
Amos,
he
who
was
also
great.
passed away. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to take a look at a really interesting...
So it's going to be a death show.
It's all death.
Okay.
So if you're interested in death, stick with it. No, we will also be talking about life as well.
Oh,
life
good.
as well.
Oh,
Including
good.
something really interesting that is happening in France. So they have this program in France where teenagers can apply to get a little money, and they can use that money in the arts and culture space.
Oh.
What has been happening, apparently, is a lot of them are using this money to buy books, and those books, many of those books, are comic books.
Oh.
So there is some question going around about whether or not these comic books constitute culture or if the program should be canceled because these people can buy their own comic books.
Can I just say something? We're out of time with this. I have to say, Callie never tells us anything about the show. And when she does, she doesn't want to. Jared is never as forthcoming as you are. So if you can talk to your colleagues, Callie's over there, you can talk to her.
I'll have a little
And
I'll have a
Jared,
little
when he
talk
comes
with them,
back,
Jim.
this kind of transparency is what we've been looking for. So thank you. Thank you. very
Anything
much
I
for
can do
this,
to help.
Edgar.
All
No,
right.
You did help. It
Okay.
was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Life
Edgar B.
and
Herrick
Death
III.
on
Life
the
and
Culture
Death.
Show this
That's
afternoon
right.
at 2 o'clock, right here at the library.
Yep, life and death for us, Jim. 3
Yes.
hours every day.
It is.
You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. If you have not had enough, you can check out our TikTok page. We have a new TikTok. It's TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tune in on Monday. We'll mark 1 year since Hamas terrorists invaded Israel. And we're going to talk about the continuing tragedy in the Middle East with Charlie Sennett. Anand Girdadas on the final stretch before the election. He's a great political commentator. Elon Stavins on his latest. He's got this Jewish-Mexican cookbook, and we hope that you're going to make something from the Jewish-Mexican
I'm making 2
cookbook
things this
over the
weekend.
weekend.
Yep, I am.
Plus, retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, who knows everything there is to know about legal matters. You often see her on CNN as well when she's not with us.
You know what Monday is? First day of the new Supreme Court.
That's right.
Yes, it
God,
is.
you can only imagine what they're going to do this year.
Exactly.
Okay, our crew, we want to thank them very much. Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker. Bill Piacitelli has been on the boards for John Parker today. Our executive producer, Jenny Bologna.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Plymouth Patuxent Museums. More than 400 years later, Thanksgiving is still the most talked about meal in American history. Visitors can experience the holiday this fall. Details at plimoth.org. National choices require local voices. Go beyond the polls and behind the stump speech with GBH News. For more trusted election coverage, go to gbhnews.org/election2024.
I'm Jamie Bologna, executive producer of Boston Public Radio, and this is 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Edgar B. Herbert III, coming up on The Culture Show, IDGAF and Touching Grass. It's not just Greek to me, it's Gen Z to me, and to anyone else who reads the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. These are two of the words among 200 that have just been added to the lexicon, and this year's entries are full of Zoomer slang. And after guiding the Celtics to victory, Jaylen Brown leads yet again, landing on the cover of Time Magazine's 100 list. We'll look at how he became the NBA's most interesting player. From there, we remember baseball legend Pete Rose and the huge asterisk that gambling left on his legacy. We'll reflect on the career of actor John Amos, known for being outspoken and playing the stern patriarch on Good Times. And we'll listen to the influence that Chris Christopherson had on country music. We take on that and more on our Arts and Culture Week in Review.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Vice President Kamala Harris is campaigning in Michigan today. She plans to meet briefly with a group of Arab Americans in Flint before she rallies supporters in that city. Harris first visits Detroit as the Democratic nominee courts union voters. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports Harris is visiting the swing state a day after thousands of U.S. dock workers suspended their labor strike.
The suspended dock workers' strike was a relief for Harris and allies. She supported the dock workers, but there were concerns that a dragged-out strike could disrupt supply chains and upend the economy just weeks before the election. Seeing an opportunity, former President Donald Trump sought to blame the White House for the economic conditions that led to the strike. At a rally in Saginaw, Michigan, Trump claimed that Republicans are now the, quote, party of the American worker. Both Harris and Trump are battling over support of union workers. Unions have traditionally supported Democrats, but Trump has been able to cut into that support. Franco Ordonez, NPR News, Detroit.
Today, Trump visits Georgia, another swing state. He and Governor Brian Kemp will talk about the recovery from Hurricane Helene and tour storm damage together. An Israeli airstrike in the Israeli-occupied West Bank overnight killed at least 18 people, according to Palestinian health officials. Here's NPR's Kat Lonsdorf.
The airstrike hit a crowded area in the Tulkarm refugee camp in the West Bank late Thursday night. It was the deadliest strike in the West Bank since the war in Gaza began last October, after Hamas led attack on southern Israel. It was unclear immediately how many more were wounded. Israel says the strike killed a Hamas leader. Hamas condemned the strike, but did not say that any of its leaders were killed. Israeli airstrikes in the West Bank had been very rare over the last 20 years, but have been used regularly in the past year, as Israel's military tactics in the West Bank, which it says are necessary for, quote, counterterrorism, have become more violent and deadly. Almost 700 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank by the Israeli military in the past year. More than 150 of those were from airstrikes, according to the UN. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The U.S. Supreme Court will decide whether members of majority groups, such as white or heterosexual individuals, should face a higher bar in proving they have been discriminated against in the workplace. The High Court is weighing the case of an Ohio woman who alleges that she was passed over for promotion and then demoted because she's straight. Marlene Ames sued under the landmark federal law that bans workplace discrimination based on traits including race, sex, religion, and national origin. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 131 points at 42,142. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey swore in the new Massachusetts State Police Colonel at the State House today. Jeffrey Noble comes to Massachusetts from the New Jersey State Police, where he held a command position. At a press conference, Noble said he's aware that the agency has faced scandals in recent years. He says he plans to reach out to stakeholders and aggressively address concerns.
I work tirelessly to ensure that we have a culture in the Massachusetts State Police that is built on equity and inclusion and respect for all and opportunity for all and a fair, level playing ground. To not only succeed and have the resources and the support, but to exceed professionally, to have professional development.
Noble says he plans to do a complete review into the recent death of a recruit at the police academy. Ohio Senator and Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance will be at a GOP fundraiser in Gloucester tomorrow, and at least one Democrat is setting the stage. House Democratic Whip Catherine Clark has already preempted Vance's visit by saying, "Don't be fooled by J.D. Vance's lies, especially when it comes to an expanded child tax credit." In August, Vance said he would love to see the child tax credit raised to $5,000 per child, up from $2,000 per child. But Clark adds Donald Trump's Project 2025 would cut taxes for the wealthiest Americans while leaving children and everyday Americans to pick up the tab. So Vance, she says, is not being truthful. She says Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are the only candidates who have a plan to expand the child's tax credit. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for use in restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
Get ready for story time.
The lights flare bright white. We are rocking like a tilt-a-whirl.
Everyday people.
The future survival of an entire species in our hands.
Personal stories.
And I decide to move to the Czech Republic and make a living as a basketball player. Believe it or not, I'm not that good at basketball.
Stories from the stage. Sunday night at 7 on GBH 89.7.
This is The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Jared Bowen is away. I'm joined by Culture Show co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. It is time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
Beach read, street corn, and Nepo baby are just a few of the English language's newest common words and phrases, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary.
The Time 100 Next list is out, highlighting 100 emerging leaders from across the U.S., and one of them might seem familiar to you. Celtics star Jaylen Brown, who's also featured on one of the 3 worldwide covers.
Reviews are pouring in for John Amos, best known for his starring role in Good Times and the TV miniseries Roots.
If it sounds country, man, that's what it is. It's a country song.
An almost unbelievable sight here at Riverfront Stadium on this September the 11th, 1985.
Well, there's never been a hometown athlete more loved than Pete Rose is loved by the people of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Give it up for Herb Alpert.
Well, as you just heard, the vocab of Gen Z has made it all the way to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and Timberland makes a fashion tribute to the 30th anniversary of Biggie Smalls' legendary hip-hop album, Ready to Die. Celtic swingman Jaylen Brown lands on the cover of Time magazine, plus huge losses in the pop culture sphere, from the complicated legacy of Pete Rose to the outspoken actor John Amos, and Chris Christopherson's everlasting legacy on country music and film. Finally, we will have an edition of Follow Up Friday with the latest on Sean Combs, who may soon be facing allegations from more than 100 men and women. But first up, we're going to sling some lingo with Merriam-Webster's entertaining 200 new words in the lexicon. They have enshrined them. These new vocabulary words include a bunch of Gen Z slang, perhaps not surprisingly, plus some political terminology, some pop culture shorthand. I thought we would start, Callie and James, if you're interested in this, with a little pop quiz. You can all play at home or play here in the library, yelling out if you know it. But I'm going to start with you, James, all right? I'm going to give you the definition. Can you tell me what this new word is? Yes? Okay, here we go. It is the concentration of a bitter compound found in hops.
IBUs, baby. International Bitterness Unit.
Well, there it is.
There we
IBU.
go.
James, that was pretty impressive. All right, Callie.
I'm
you
going
ready for
down in
yours?
flames.
Here
Go
we go. This word means to participate in normal activities in the real world.
I would say IRL, but I know that's not right.
That is not right.
Yes, so.
This would be touch grass.
Oh, okay, there you go.
That would be touch
Yes,
grass.
yes.
All right, so Callie, James, what do we make of this? 200 plus new words in the Merriam-Webster dictionary?
With the exception of the one that you just asked me, which I just
Touch
didn't
grass.
know what
Yeah.
that was, and I don't drink beer, so I never would have figured that one out. I just have to say that I think Gen Z has done a lot to get words in that I just assume were always there. Street corn, beach read. I'm thinking I was saying that forever.
Yeah.
These are words that were crafted by them from their lived experience, and I got to give it to them. They're some pretty good words that I use all the time.
Yeah, but there's also words, that are dubbed those Gen Z words like simp and NGL, the acronym for not gonna lie, and beast mode, which gives me pause sometimes calling it Gen Z slang, because to me it's just the vocabulary of Black America, right? And so we see how that gets filtered up, into what's considered acceptable mainstream language. Can I slack manager beast mode now?
Yeah.
Sure. Any repercussions? No. If I had done that 10 years ago, what would have happened? I don't know. So
yeah, and I think you touch on something which is not new, right? The idea that something is going to come out of the black lingo in America and filter its way up into the mainstream and then make it into dictionary. I mean, that's a pathway that has been going on for decades and decades and decades. I mean, it's interesting too when you look at this dictionary stuff, because on the one hand, yeah, we're sort of saying some of this is Gen Z lingo or even sort of more recent. But Callie, you make the point. Some of this stuff you're like, well, why wasn't it in the dictionary already? We talk with the folks at Merriam-Webster fairly regularly. Peter Sokolowski, their editor-at-large, has done a lot of stuff with the Curiosity Desk. They're right here in Springfield. And he makes the point that it's a tricky thing with the dictionary because, especially in this day and age, you need to stay current. You want to be there as a resource if somebody wants to look up a word and say, what was that word I heard? At the same time, you need a certain level of evidence that this thing has transcended into common parlance before you put it in the dictionary. So how do you sort of strike that balance?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about as we were talking about this is that you were talking about Black culture being absorbed. There's also certain regional culture pieces that, if you're not living in the region, it's all new to you. And I thought about moving here from Memphis originally. We never said pasta. I was like, what the hell is that? We said spaghetti.
What did you say?
Spaghetti.
For any pasta.
Was spaghetti. That was it. I didn't know it was all this other stuff going on. So therefore, in the Sopranos, when they did capicola, seasoned Italian pork that is cut from the neck and the top shoulder, I was like, oh, that must be like that spaghetti thing. And the same thing with burrata. I was like, okay, I just didn't know that before I came. So I think there's also some of that as a part of this additional 200 words to the dictionary.
That's funny too, because it makes me think about what dictionaries are for. It's weirdly inconceivable that before this year, if you were out and someone, got a charcuterie and a cheese board and they said there's some capicola on here and some burrata and you didn't know what that was, you couldn't go home and look it up in the dictionary. But then I was like, do dictionaries exist in homes anymore? And do a certain generation of people know how to use a dictionary? Much more on that later on.
Yeah.
But
and like a lot of stuff, the dictionary is inherently online, and these things are added to Merriam-Webster.com. So this is in the online stuff, not necessarily yet in a print version of the dictionary.
Right.
And so this is they've talked about this too. Like in the online space, you can be much more expansive in terms of what makes it there to be. To be able to be looked up or what have you. I mean, these words, I like this because one of the things I find interesting is there's always a story with why a word gets added when, and you can kind of do some sort of sleuthing. So one of the new words that caught my eye is snog, right?
Yeah.
Which is like a British term for sort of making out or, kind of kissing, canoodling,
well,
whatever.
I thought it was more than that, but okay.
But I look at that and I say, okay, so that gets added now. Well, if you look at the last maybe 10 years in America, right, between Harry Potter and access to media coming over from England, the idea that a sort of term that was started over in England, has made its way to America, has like spread wide enough that it's now in a dictionary that's being made in Springfield. Like there's a little story there. So
and I would argue
cool.
a lot of us know it from watching a lot of or absorbing that British culture again.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, I was like, oh, snog, interesting.
Even throwing it back further, like Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging, or whatever that book was called.
Yeah.
But like one last thing I just want to throw in there that I think is interesting about all these words is that, you know, on TikTok and, you know, Instagram and stuff, like there seems to be a really big youth kind of interest in words. Like I feel linguistic talk is very much a thing. Like you just kind of get on and there's someone that's explaining cool etymologies and how language works. But yeah.
A lot of people are communicating by typing. Maybe that has something to do with it, right? Well, Time's Next 100 list has come out, and notable for us here is a Celtics player, Jaylen Brown, superstar. He has not only made the list, but he is one of very few people on this list who is on the cover of this Time magazine, which is a pretty big deal. The Time Next 100 list is looking at basically young influentials, whether they be political figures like Maryland's Governor Wes Moore is on this, musicians like Shabuzi, actors including Nicola Coughlan. What do we make of Jaylen Brown on this list?
Well deserved. And, you know, you want somebody on the cover that is bigger than his job or her job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or their job. So he's that person. Yes, he's a star basketball player. He's got all those skills. He loves the game. But boy, does he have a lot going on in off the court. In fact, somebody was quoted relative to his being on the cover saying he'll probably eventually be known more for his work off the court, which is all about social justice, working with some kids locally, setting up some foundations that are across the country, really about trying to increase generational wealth in black communities. He referenced the Tulsa's Black Wall Street that was destroyed in a massacre there, and how he wants to rebuild communities in the way that that community was built at the time. I mean, the guy has got a lot going on, you know?
Yeah, I mean, being on the cover of Time, right? It's a big deal. I don't subscribe to Time. I haven't read a Time magazine cover to cover in years. But, you know, you go to the
think it's still a big deal?
I do think it's still a big deal. Every time you go to the grocery store, you know, you see that cover, that face is in your head. And I think that, like, it's a big deal for Jaylen Brown to be on the cover of this because it gets us thinking about how, you know, that adage of shut up and dribble just doesn't hold water because these are people with thoughts and opinions and ambitions, right, beyond the court, beyond the field. You know, Jaylen Brown, you know, when he was coming out of college at UC Berkeley, mind you, where he took a graduate level course his first semester, was dubbed too smart for the NBA, and scouts were willing to pass over on him because, you know, they thought he would get bored and just kind of leave the league. And so, I don't know, I like how he represents the antithesis of this dumb jock idea.
Yeah.
You know, this incredible basketball player who also had an internship offer from NASA, who's giving lectures at Berkeley about, you know, Foucault's Panopticon. It's inspirational, honestly, to me, and I can only imagine to an athlete who also is, you know, really smart too.
Let's hear a little from Jaylen Brown. This is a very recent episode of the YouTube show Hot Ones. Now, if you don't know what Hot Ones is, it's basically like a celebrity or a figure sits down and eats a bunch of hot wings. But there's an interview that's happening during this, oftentimes very, very good. Sean Evans, the man, he asked Jaylen during this episode who Jaylen thought was the most culturally impactful or globally influential NBA player. Here's what Jaylen Brown said.
So it's hard to choose one, but who would yours be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Bill Russell.
I was about to say that's mine.
Oh, really?
For sure. Did we just become best friends?
I think we just became best friends.
Not just in sports being the most winningest player, but how he seen his influence beyond an athlete or an entertainer. A lot of the guys just want to keep it, you know, sports and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, you know, our value, our influence goes beyond. It depends on if we want to use it or not. That's it.
You know, one of the things I really like about Jaylen Brown, and, you know, in addition to all of, you know, the work that you've been talking about, is him doing with his foundation and stuff like that, he's also something like of a restless soul, and I love that. So he started the 741 shoe line, right? And he, you know, and when he was asked about, like, why did you start this shoe line, he was like, well, you know, to me, it doesn't really matter if it's successful or not. He said, I'm just kind of tired of seeing the same old things. And so I wanted to do it another way. And that is an impulse that has driven innovation in every field you can imagine for all time. And like that sort of impulse of his to just be like, you know what, I'm just tired of it being this way. I'm going to do something about it. That I think is really cool.
And just to make a fine point on that, he owns all of that. No Nike, no other sports shoe company in which he is a part. He owns all of it. He decided not to go to one of those companies so that he could do what he wanted to do.
So staying with famous sports figures here quickly, want to make note that this week Sotheby's has what is being called the GOAT Collection, watches and treasures from Tom Brady. Yes, you can bid on one of Tom Brady's luxury watches or some sports memorabilia. What do we make of this? Tom Brady, is he overexposed at this point?
Oh, he's
Maybe
been
a little
overexposed.
bit?
But my thing is, if you're going to buy some Tom Brady stuff for a lot of money, buy some memorabilia. What are you going to do with this watch?
I mean, you can wear it until time. Like, I'm not a...
But no one knows it's Tom Brady's watch. So.
Well, he has a flying tourbillon that he's putting up for that auction, and his name is engraved across the dial. The face of the watch.
Yeah.
I could have gotten that at TJ Maxx where somebody put his name on the watch.
Well, to me, my thing is like that is a watch for a super fan, very clearly.
Okay.
But if you have the money to buy that, you probably are able to call up Tom Brady and orchestrate that sale without the middleman of an auction house.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to know. Maybe a museum will buy these. I have no idea, but I do want to know who winds up getting these watches.
Also, why? Like, I sort of asked the question, why is this auction happening? I mean, total speculation, but did Giselle maybe buy him some of these watches? I don't know. It seems like kind of a strange thing to me. Oh. All right, we're listening to Hypnotized. This is from Biggie Smalls' iconic album, Ready to Die, getting a 30th anniversary tribute from the shoe company Timberland. What's going on here, James?
Okay, sorry, quickly, Hypnotized is from Life After Death,
oh, yes.
album number 2.
Great point.
But, still iconic Biggie song for an iconic Biggie shoe by an iconic, American brand. They are releasing a special Biggie edition to commemorate the 30th anniversary of his debut album, featuring the, famous baby on the tongue of the shoe, Biggie's name inscribed on the heel. You can probably acquire one of those much easier than you can
a Tom Brady watch.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. I was thinking about why collabs and designs like that are important, and I was thinking about what would Timberland be today without the influence from hip hop and New York street culture. How many people are thinking of Timberland as a work boot? You go to Timberland.com and they still market it that way, but it's like, come on, you're not. That's not who you're buying to go, walk through the snow to go to a site. I could be wrong, but I just can't fathom that. And it's just important that these brands it's almost like they're paying their due. We wouldn't be what we are without you. So thank you. So yeah.
And there's been many articles and books now pointing out that with regard to Timberland, that was a struggle at the beginning because they didn't necessarily want to be associated with
They were sort of
hip-hop.
fighting against it a little bit, yeah.
And not recognizing the reality that James has just outlined. And so for them to come very full circle, not only embrace over the years because that's where their money was coming from, but also to decide to honor Biggie, by the way, whose real name is Christopher Wallace. So if you go looking for the Biggie thing, you might not find it, but it's under the Christopher Wallace.
Yeah, they're calling it the Christopher Wallace collection. And so
yes.
it's they're sort of iconic, that 6-inch boot. You can probably picture it normally in the wheat color, right? There's also they're also doing one in black.
Yeah.
You know what caught my eye about this, which I thought was really cool, and this is good, in my mind, it's kind of like cool design and also smart marketing, because there's a little bit of nostalgia going on in this, right? We're at 30 years.
A little bit.
So the eyelets, the thing that the that the lace goes through, they're in the shape of aux tips, which is auxiliary tips that would have been on old like Walkmans and stuff like that. So the little cover that was on that, it's kind of like a hexagon. Each one of the eyelets looks like one of those, so it's a nod to like people listening, to this music on these devices and plugging their aux cable in. So I think that's just like very clever, very
It's
cool.
already a collectible, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about how cool that would be, to have when you're a kid, in school. I had a pair of Tims given to me by a karate instructor when I was in middle school. I didn't have cool shoes.
Yeah.
And I wore those Tims to gym class. It's just kind of being the talk of the town with these Biggie Tims would be such a cool thing to experience. But
all right. Well, we're going to step away just for a moment, but we will be back with more. You are listening to our Arts and Culture Week in Review. We are live from the GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. This is The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
When you need to stay informed.
State officials are launching a new effort to provide health services in Dorchester after the closure of Kearney Hospital.
Trust GBH News.
But local providers are warning that group needs to work quickly.
Many of the patients that would have gone there are just staying home and getting sicker.
Always here with ongoing coverage of the news that matters to you. GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the Boston Book Festival in partnership with GBH, a free event October 26th in Copley Square. You can celebrate the power of words with notable authors of YA, children's literature, and more. Details at bostonbookfest.org. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure. Proud sponsor of GBH's Stories from the Stage, Life is a Laugh. A live in-person event, Wednesday, October 16th at 6:30.
Last year's chaotic FAFSA rollout meant millions of students didn't get financial aid until the last minute.
That gave me another reason why, maybe it's a sign that I'm not meant to go to college. It was holding me back from so many opportunities.
How another delayed FAFSA is leaving students uncertain about their future on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. If you're in the neighborhood, we're going to be here for another half hour, so you can make your way down here if you want to and join us here. I'm joined by my co-hosts in The Culture Show here, Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. If you are just tuning in, we are doing our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes remembering actor John Amos, whose death was announced this week. He was 84 years old. He's best known for his role in Roots, his role in Good Times, and for being fairly outspoken on race and equity and equality. Callie, what are your thoughts when you think about John Amos?
Huge loss. And then, you start reading the obituary and you realize all the other roles that you forgot that he had. We should note that there were 4 seasons of Good Times. That's the TV comedy series in which he played Father James Evans with Florida Evans, his wife. Can't think of the name of the actress right now who played his wife. And that's the one with JJ Dynamite and all of that. But anyway, he didn't make the 4th season. They wrote him out of the script because he complained about their turning JJ, the son, into like a buffoon. And with a lot of racial stereotypes that were not necessary. And the whole point of the show was finally to portray a black family with all of the family members, the father and the mother and the kids.
Let's take a minute, since we are talking about Good Times. Let's hear John Amos as the patriarch, James, in season 1. This is the first season of Good Times. In this scene, he's talking with his son, Michael, played by Ralph Carter, who has just been suspended from school after disparaging George Washington to his teacher.
You see these hands, son?
What do they mean to you?
They're the ones that's gonna hit me.
No, I mean these calluses, Michael. Son, that's why I want you to finish school so your hands don't never have to look like this. That's why I don't take no excuses when you mess up in school. Yeah, son, you suck at drive all the knowledge you can. If that ain't enough, then you get some more, but you get what's there. Michael, you can't drop out. We ain't even dropped in yet. And there's one more thing I want to say to you, son. I want to apologize for wanting to give you a whipping.
Daddy, you apologizing to me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you can do that, I can go back to school and apologize to Mrs. Danvers tomorrow.
Well, all right. Now, that's my man.
And everybody learned a lesson.
Yes, they did. I just want to note that when we were talking about this the other day, we three, we all had a line from Coming to America that are our favorites.
Love him in Coming to America.
So just to throw that out.
You know, it's funny thinking about his outspoken. First of all, that was about disparaging George Washington. So now I'm wondering what John Amos would say.
Yeah,
like as a person.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, Dynamite. You know that it's the catchphrase of the show. But to me, you know, Florida's grief with the damn James and smashing the bull.
Yeah.
That is the iconic line, and that exists because of him butting heads with Norman Lear. And at least to me, that just demonstrates, right, the idea of, you know, talent in front of the camera, trying at least to kind of, you know, have a moral center about what scripts they're given, the stories that they're given to tell. And also, you know, you can consider that somewhat inspiring.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you know, I think about, you know, his presence on screen, right? And he has this very, very captivating combination of toughness and warmth. And I think about the fact that, I mean, the bravery that it probably takes for him as an actor to push back the way he did at the writers and hold his ground.
Well, let me just
in
add,
the manner that
as
he
a
did.
black actor, because there weren't any roles, and so for him to give up a role, which by that time was finally making some money, was quite brave, actually.
So another death this week, another person known for toughness, maybe not so much for warmth, and that is baseball legend Pete Rose. Obviously a very complicated legacy. Pete Rose, who holds all sorts of baseball records, including being the all-time hits leader. And then famously in 1989, he is banned permanently from baseball for gambling, banned by Paul Giamatti's father, Bart Giamatti, who was commissioner at the time, and then died like 2 weeks later of a heart attack at 51. So just kind of a crazy moment in baseball history. But Pete Rose passes away. James, how do you grapple with the legacy of Pete Rose?
I like that word, legacy, because I had this thought, you know, the other day, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is how myths are born. Not legends, but myths. You know, there's this guy from way, way back, Gaius Diocles. He was a Roman chariot racer and considered possibly the wealthiest athlete of all time. We only know that because of an inscription on a monument that a fan had made. That's what a Hall of Fame is, right? Pete Rose will never be in the Hall of Fame. But I just imagine, you know, a world where centuries, maybe even millennia from now, we can see the Hall of Fame of these great athletes, but you hear the whispers of this name, Pete Rose, and you're like, did he exist? Is that even possible? Is it real? And yeah, I was like, that's how the differentiation between myth and legend. And listen, depending on who you're asking, is a myth larger than legend? Maybe.
Somebody recently was playing a quote from him, or a piece from an interview he did. He said, no, I will never be in the Hall of Fame, and probably until I die, and maybe even not after that. And I just want to note that he years and years and years denied he was betting on baseball, and he only admitted it in this interview with Charles Gibson from ABC in 2004. So this was betting he did in 1987 and 1988, and it hurt him. And he was put on the list to never be allowed to be in the Hall of Fame. Lots of people have called for that to be reversed, including former President Donald Trump, but
does anybody see any, I mean, a lot of people have pointed out this irony of the fact that, you know, it was betting that got him into the hot water, ostensibly, even though some people will say, listen, he had a lot of other problems as a human, and it's kind of on character also that he's out. But betting is now such a big part of sports. We see all of the major sports leagues in bed with betting outfits, and there's sponsorship deals. Does that sort of complicate it at all for you as you look back at that?
It doesn't complicate it, but I bet he's like, what the heck?
I mean, you know, also got to remember that Pete Rose was betting on himself, right? He was betting on Cincinnati Reds games. He wasn't doing a Jonte Porter and like betting that he wouldn't perform well and throwing it.
Yeah.
And so as far as like the gambling kind of penalties go, betting that you're going to win, I'm sure that they do that mentally going out every single day. But the last thing that I want to say about it too, though, at least that I can contribute, is the love is still there in Cincinnati. I'm just reading about this bar that's going to be playing the famous hit game, where he takes the crown, and they'll be selling Miller Lite at 1985 prices of $1.85 for a 12-ounce bottle.
Wow.
Well, let's turn the page and listen to a little music. We have one more figure from the arts and culture space to remember this week. Here's Chris Christopherson singing his early hit, Sunday Morning Coming Down, originally recorded by Ray Stevens in 1969 before becoming a #1 hit on the Billboard U.S. country chart for his friend Johnny Cash. With an incredible story. I mean, the man was a Rhodes Scholar. He studied English at Oxford. He became a helicopter pilot in the Army and then becomes a janitor in Nashville so he can break into the music business. I mean, and then he goes on to be in 50 films as an actor.
Well, I'm struck by that story of his taking the helicopter now that he's a pilot and landing on Johnny Cash's property with a tape of his music saying, hey, you want to listen to this?
Hey, I got something for you.
So that's it. And of course, for me, I have to say, I do like his music, but A Star Is Born, I mean, come on. That's it for me.
Is that the quintessential version out of all four?
Well, it's pretty damn good.
Is that because of Chris Christopherson or somebody else in that version?
No, it's the chemistry between the two of them. Two hearts. Come on, you guys. That was a great movie.
No, I mean, it is. You're not going to get a disagreement from me on that.
We're also talking about, came out of the Rose thing, about talking about toughness. And I do love the conflicting did they, didn't they accounts of, coming to heat with Toby Keith at Willie Nelson's 70th birthday party over kind of political differences. And, at least my understanding, right, is that Outlaw Country as a response to kind of the corporatized, formalized, Nashville machine that's cranking it out. And you have these artists like Christopherson and Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash being like a kind of pushback, against that. And so what's more outlaw country than fighting for what you believe in if that, fight is against Toby Keith? But what does outlaw mean to you?
I mean, I don't know. I think outlaw we were talking about Jaylen Brown a little bit. I mean, outlaw is a little bit of saying, like, all right, there's an established system here, and I'm a little tired of this established system, so I'm going to, operate outside of it in the way that, I know how. I mean, he's got that famous line from a Leonard Cohen song that Chris Christopherson has said what he wanted on his grave, which is like a bird on a wire, like a drunk in a midnight choir, I tried in my own way to be free. That's outlaw.
And I'll note that the two of them share that intellect too as part of their persona.
Well, I think Chris Christopherson talked about that outlaw scene in Nashville at that time as their Paris in the 1920s. Yeah. So. All right, well, we're going to step away again just for a moment. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. I'm with co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. Stay with us for more of our Arts and Culture Week in Review.
People in rural America have far less access to college than their urban peers.
You sort of just assume that folks have colleges available to them.
How many rural kids do you have on campus? Kids like me. It was like 3%.
And it's widening economic and political divisions.
When college seems inaccessible, it becomes a sort of us versus them.
In our podcast, College Uncovered, we investigate the rural decline in college opportunities. Get it and subscribe wherever you listen.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Babson College. You can learn to lead with impact and become a driving force for change. Babson's graduate virtual open house is on October 9th. Registration at babson.edu/gradopenhouse. And Plymouth Patuxent Museums. More than 400 years later, Thanksgiving is still the most talked about meal in American history. Visitors can experience the holiday this fall. Details at plimoth.org.
Japanese officials are bringing back nuclear power, but in the wake of the 2011 Fukushima disaster, many citizens are pushing back.
Does that seawall being there make you feel any safer?
No, I don't think so. It's not safe at all.
That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to the very groovy culture show right now. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes Herb Alpert. He is at the age of 89 or 90, breaking the brass ceiling, as it were, going on tour, and he's got a new album out, his 50th. Herb Alpert still going strong.
I just want to say that it was great to bump in on Rise coming out of, that Biggie talk that we had, sampled that song. But 90 years old next year in a couple months, depending on how you're counting it, if you know his birthday. And he's supposed to celebrate, he's going to be forming the new Tijuana Brass Band. And he's going to be doing a year-long tour with his wife, I believe. And it's interesting because you said it's his 50th album.
50th album, yeah.
Named, I think, 50. Came out on September 20th. But in an interview, he also revealed that he's in the midst of working on 2 new albums right now, including one Christmas album. The man is relentless.
Unstoppable.
It sounds so crisp and clean.
Yeah, I know. The album is actually Dancing Down 50th Street. I'm impressed by this on many levels. He says he's better now at playing than he was 30 years ago, that he's a better musician at this point.
Well, he's got like this great story, I love, somebody who's been playing the trumpet for this long has got to have some great stories, right? And he's got this story about this guy, when he was a young trumpet player, this guy in New York, Carmine Caruso, who was known as the troubleshooter, right? And he was like having trouble playing the trumpet. He's like, I can't get the sound out of it. What am I doing wrong? And apparently this Carmine Caruso basically looks at him and says something like, the trumpet's just a piece of plumbing. You're the instrument. You know what I mean? And but to that point, the idea that is a kind of instrument where if he is the instrument, sure, he can be better 30 years later than be better now than he was 30 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, what you have when you have an artist and a craftsperson, somebody who is so on top of their skills, they now are able to contextualize that music with all of their life experience in a way that hits differently. So we could go and take an album from back in the day and then go hear him on the tour, and I guarantee you there's going to have some melody and some flavors and some other stuff that he wasn't capable of doing earlier, but now is.
What do we make of, this is a little bit of a trend, he's going on tour at the age of 90. We've seen some stuff this week about Frankie Valli at 90 is on tour. He was in Boston in March, and there are some people who are saying, like, who is sending Frankie Valli out there? Like, this is elder abuse. Now, Frankie Valli has come out and said, no, nobody makes me do something I don't want to do. But Johnny Mathis at 89 is going to be in Worcester next weekend. Ringo Starr's out there at 84 on another tour. What do you make of this? Like, people in their late 80s, even pushing 90, touring.
I don't know these people personally, but I think, we can take folks at their word, right, about whether or not they feel up to the task. And specifically with Alpert, like you were saying, Callie, the trumpet, a lot of instruments are physical. You need to have the strength to project and to be able to intone and just, make a clear sound with that piece of plumbing, as, that interviewer put it, Edgar. And during, I think, the same interview, he picked up his horn, started playing a couple of notes and actually just kind of cheekily fell into Spanish Flea. So he clearly still has it. And for him to take the lead on, again, 2 new albums, one coming up this year, that's not nothing. You have to have that, physicality to go out there to begin with.
Well, one could argue, just to be clear, though, that in an album, at least it could be edited. But on stage live, you got to bring it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with Johnny and Rudy. And I would say Johnny probably still has it. But you have to also trust the artist to know when there's some things that are just not in play as they were before, and they have to deal with that.
And you figure the audience they're going in with probably a certain set. They're not expecting to see these people at the age of 35.
Well, let me also tell you that social media will eat you alive
if
if you paid the big
that's
ticket
for sure.
and they're not getting what they thought they were getting. So that won't be good.
All right, well.
It's time for Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday.
Yes, it's Friday, and that means it is time for Follow-Up Friday. That is us updating you on some of the stories that we have been covering, which includes an update on Sean Combs. He is currently in jail, awaiting trial on sex trafficking, racketeering charges. He, it should be said, has pled guilty, continues to, through his lawyers, has pled not guilty, continues through his lawyers as more things are coming out to continue to say he is not guilty of any of this. But new this week, a Texas-based attorney, Tony Busby, who says he's representing some 120 accusers, both women and men, says he's bringing 120 separate charges that stretch back more than 20 years, and those are coming down the pike.
What I think is interesting about this, there are many things that are interesting, but 3,280 individuals contacted the firm. They vetted the 120. They expect to vet some more, but that's a lot of people. So I expect there to be bigger numbers. They came from 25 states, with the majority from California, New York, Georgia, and Florida. These are places where these parties that people have alleged all this bad activity happened. And the other part of this that has gotten a lot of attention is that there are some very young people involved, charged at this point. The charges involved very young people who were sexually abused.
Yeah, and just to hold the
Assaulted,
seriousness and gravity of the situation, it's good to remember that this is not class action. These are individuals whose cases are hopefully going to be tried on an individual basis. It's that, that personhood and not a collective mass. So just to kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, this is a troubling story that continues to get more troubling. So staying in the courtroom, we have talked a lot on the Culture Show about climate activists and the sort of the propensity specifically around some of these groups, like No New Oil is one of the groups. Just Stop Oil is one of the groups that has done this, where they go into galleries and they glue themselves to the wall, or they toss soup on a painting or whatever to fight climate change, or to call for action on climate change. This week we have two cases that were decided in court. In one case, two activists, these are folks who at the National Gallery in London threw tomato soup at the Van Gogh painting Sunflowers and glued themselves to the wall. They were sentenced 20 months for one of them, 24 months for the other, in prison. At the same time, two activists who glued themselves to a Turner painting at the Manchester Art Gallery and wrote No New Oil and the logo for Just Stop Oil on the floor with chalk, they were acquitted of the charges. So two very different results in two courts in the UK. What do we make of this? Well,
it seems that the judges' understanding or impression or perspective on climate change came into play. So on the group, the two that were acquitted, the judge said something about, there is a legitimate movement. And so when you have a movement and it's a protest movement, you're going to have some stuff like this. So you have to think about whether or not, this goes beyond that. And so as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but they've got acquitted. And the other judge wasn't feeling that. I mean, he didn't say he wasn't feeling that. He just didn't articulate that perspective. So that's what I took away from it. Though I'm still confused beyond the judges what the difference is.
So speaking of the judges, though, one of the statements from Project Oil that I thought was really striking about this, kind of to what you were saying, was that the district judge found that the action was proportionate in view of the climate crisis. And that was for, the release of the prison time, right? And it's like, are we turning a corner in some kind of jurisdictions, like you were saying? Like, maybe these kids are kind of on to something. Or adults, you know.
Yeah.
The other thing that strikes me is when I look at this and say, what are the differences here, right? One is that, you know, the acquittal happens in Manchester, the prison time happens in London, so that's a difference. And also, not that Turner is a slouch, but one of them was a Van Gogh. And I wonder if the fact that we're talking about Van Gogh's Sunflowers, which is a very famous painting that's on, you know, posters all over college walls, the fact that that is the one where they got sentenced, I wonder... I kind of find myself saying, like, maybe these climate activists have a point, because their point that they try to make is you're making, you know, this is a painting and yet people are dying. And so, I don't know. I wonder about that.
I would just also note that the Just Stop Oil organization is a group that's funded by, is based in California and funded by public donations, small public donations in this small organization. And that's it. They've had a kind of major impact for who they are.
All right, another story here that we've talked about. The children of France, they may always have Paris, but they might not always have this cultural past that they've had for a couple years. It's a government-funded program that could be scrapped because the idea here is basically folks in France, young folks, teenagers, can apply for this grant money. They get a certain amount of money to spend on cultural things. Well, it turns out that...
Which is revolutionary, by the way.
It is revolutionary. Yeah. I don't disagree. But there's a report out and it seems like an increasing push to maybe do away with this program because a lot of this money, it appears, is being spent on books, and a large percentage of those books are manga or comic books.
And in France, this is the second largest group of people reading and appreciating manga, other than Japan
in the world.
First.
Yeah,
in the world.
Yeah, so the market for manga has gone nuts in France.
So this is my takeaway from it, aside from all the details, which I think is very interesting. The pushback, I just want to make this quote so folks understand where the pushbackers are coming from. A senatorial commission criticized the highly dysfunctional system, and here's the quote. The later you plant seeds, the less you harvest. At 18, it's too late to discover cultural activities like museums, classical concerts, or opera. And I want to say, no, 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 no. And no, you're just totally wrong. This is all about lifelong learning. We don't come fully formed to go to the concert or whatever. You are introduced to it. And I have to say again, those school programs that I went to that I was just amazed by as a kid with my teachers, that was very important. So no.
Yeah, so I think it's like a needle or a thread that needs to be threaded. Whatever.
Yes.
There's a thread, there is a needle, and something needs to be done with it.
But yeah, I mean, 2.8% of the funds of these teenagers are being used on concert seats. 0.7% for a museum card, and less than a hundredth of a percent, right, are for theater tickets. And I was trying to make heads or tails of this because part of the pushback, right, is should we scrap it and then just diversify, the offerings that we already have, in those schools? And then I kept thinking, is diversification the thing that needs to be done? And then I realized, and this might be the thing, right, there's rules that come, for better or worse, with going to the orchestra, with going to the theater. And it's like, are these people not going to these things because it's too expensive or because they don't feel welcome?
Or they don't know about it.
Right.
How we were introduced. So part of the discussion of keeping it and supporting it is to give more of the money to the teachers who are doing the group activities, because that gets you going. That's not a choice necessarily from the kids who, for reasons James has just outlined, or feeling, I've heard Jared talk about feeling really intimidated going to a museum when he was young. Why do that if you can buy a manga?
The other thing is this is a countrywide thing, right? This isn't just a program in Paris. So, I think there are a lot of people who live outside of city centers who can't easily get access to a museum or an opera house or a theater to go and have one of these experiences. So that's kind of another piece of it.
Yeah, I would suggest for them, they didn't ask me, but take some part of the money, amp it up for the teachers doing the group activities and the field trips, and then, introduce and support people and exploring those other places.
Look, if they don't like how the money's being spent, I would fingers crossed that they sort of alter the program a little bit and not scrap it altogether.
Not just kind of pull the funding entirely.
Yeah.
One last thing that we want to give an update on quickly before we finish up here is we talked about last week, I think everybody was very excited about Project Skydrop. This was a treasure hidden in western Massachusetts in the woods. Well, the game is over. The prize has been found as of 5:19 on Tuesday afternoon. If you've been following the story, you surely already heard about this. A meteorologist named Dan Leonard found the trophy. Apparently, at least early on, he said he didn't really even care about the prize money. He took the trophy and he was like, I don't know if I'm going to use the Bitcoin wallet for the $87,000 part of the prize. I just liked the thrill of the hunt. So if you are involved in this, by the way, there is a second place prize thing that they're still doing. So you can submit, if you've already been in the contest, you can submit your best guess, and when this contest is all over, they're going to award $100 back to, I think, 20 people who get the closest.
I think until October 10th is the
that's when it cuts off. That's when they will do the big reveal.
Mm-hmm. I loved how science played out here. He looked at the weather conditions in on the live feed. He looked at the plants, and he figured out where it likely could be and honed in. Mm-hmm.
All right. Here we go. That sound means it is time for our lightning round. Callie, Crossley, what caught your eye this week?
Well, Percival Everett is having a moment. He is the author of James, which is the character that was in Huckleberry Finn as the enslaved person, who now has a whole book from his perspective, and he's been shortlisted for the Booker Prize and now also for the National Book Award for fiction. And, congrats to him. We'll see what happens in the end.
Very nice. James, what's the story that caught your eye this week?
My parting gift is some weekend reading, an article in the November issue of The Atlantic by Rose Horowitz called The Elite College Students Who Can't Read Books. It is a dive into this phenomenon of kids showing up on college campuses that have never really been assigned a book cover to cover in their entire high school career, and who are facing a crisis in English seminars and classes across the country because they can't handle the reading. Where do we go from here? So I'm taking a pretty big look at that.
Is this a long read, a short read?
It is a medium read. I believe that you can do it.
All right. Well, we're going to stay in the literature space. The story that caught my eye this week is something that is happening this Sunday. Porter Square Books, which is an independent bookstore in Porter Square in the shopping center. It's been there for 20 years or so, I think maybe 20 plus years. They are moving to a larger space on Mass Ave, which is just around the corner from where they currently are, about 1,000 feet. So this Sunday, what they're going to do is they're asking for volunteers, and by the way, you can check out their website to volunteer. They're going to form a human chain between the two locations, the old location and the new location, and they're going to pass the first shipment of books from the old store to the new store in this human chain. So if you want to be a part of helping this independent bookstore move into their larger space, you can do so this Sunday. You can RSVP on their website. I just think that's a cool local story.
It's
and,
fun.
It's a great store.
It's a great
independent
store.
Bookstores.
Yeah.
We're lousy with them around here.
Yeah.
We're very lucky. Well, I think that's pretty much it. That is all we have for this edition of The Culture Show. Tune in on Monday for a preview of Bachtoberfest. Before we finish up, Callie, what do you have happening on Under the Radar?
We're looking at restoring people who have felony convictions voter rights. It's a little complicated here in Massachusetts because people who have come out of prison can get theirs restored, but there's some other issues. Anyway, there's that. And then we spoke about Jaylen Brown and the NBA. His fashion is also on point, and we're doing an encore segment about fashion and NBA players based on Mitchell S. Jackson's book called Fly, the Big Book of Basketball Fashion.
James, real quick, what can we look for from you?
We are researching right now for a story that don't want to reveal too much, but is maybe little-known holiday celebrating a medical specialty that was born right here in Boston.
Ooh, mysterious.
I mean, I can't say too much.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we've got. That's all we've got. Thanks today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena Dueñas, Chris Hanks, and Olivia Corshio. Also, our thanks to the City Table, Lennox Hotel, and, of course, the Newsfeed Cafe. Our thanks to all of the folks who came out to see us here today live at the BPL. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Have an arts and culture-filled weekend.
Where is Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.